Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Hurry Up. We are your hosts, Adam Costas, and my good friend here, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, introduce yourself to the public.
How's everybody doing right now? I hope everybody's enjoying your Tuesday morning and you're getting ready for some good NFL and some NBA playoff talk.
Awesome. See, normally, folks, we haven't done this show in a while live, but Jeff brought it to my attention. He said, hey, when are you bringing back the Hurry Up live? I said, you know what? I got some time on Tuesday to clear my schedule at 10 a.m. How is that? He said that is fine. And so we are here today to bring you another edition of the Hurry Up Live. And I am so excited that Jeff brought it to my attention to do it up because I have a lot to say and I can't wait till Sunday. So, Jeff, why don't we start off with the playoffs? Give us your thoughts on the net debacle so far.
The tale of two halves. That's exactly what the Nets debacle was. Came out shooting the lights out, played pretty well, good defensively in that first half. Made Philadelphia absolutely uncomfortable. James Harden looked like he was a G leaguer out there in the first half. Really weren't getting any big they weren't getting any really good looks out there, the Sixers were. And then the second half was just a completely different story. Dinwiddie was turning the ball all over the place. I forgot if Nicholas Claxton actually played last night. The bench was horrendous. They couldn't defend at all, and they couldn't make a shot to save their lives. And they ended up crumbling at the end of it. And Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey were just two men on a different level yesterday. So puts together a disastrous loss for the Brooklyn Nets.
And it brings me back to this. I was watching the game, and I'm watching the Nets give a yeoman's effort. Very hard play, spirited first half, and then it breaks down. And what I saw again was, like you said, Jeff, those obviously the mistakes and turnovers and the collapse in the second half. But again, when you watch the playoffs, what the Nets don't have is ball movement. When they get stagnant at the top of the key, they're just standing around looking at each other. And I'm watching like the other game that we're going to mention, Sacramento versus Golden State, and guys are running around, creating screens, trying to get airspace to create shots. And the Nets go down there, and Dinwiddie doesn't do anything. He's standing there trying to point out fingers, doing this. And Dinwiddie's best when he can just get the ball and attack and feed off the dribble. And you're watching the rest of the NBA in the playoffs do that. They have no semblance of offense. I don't know what Jacques Vaughn's doing. I don't know if he – it's just playoff experience. He doesn't – maybe they don't have the horses, but it looks like sometimes they're lost when they're out there. And I think, maybe coming to Brooklyn will help them a little bit, home cooking back in your own bed. Maybe that'll help ignite them a little bit. But they need a little bit more offense when it gets stagnant. We talk about this with the Yankees when manufacturing runs or manufacturing offense. The Nets need to start to find a way to manufacture it. You can't just sit there and hope that your guys are hot all night because sometimes they go cold. And then when they go cold, you've got to find a way to put it in the key, drop it down low in the key, in the low post. You got to make sure you got ball movement going on there. And that's the thing that I'm finding with the Nets right now. They're not going to get past the Sixers or even win a game if they don't figure out how to move the basketball. Okay, all these other teams are passing to get open shots or finding the open man or driving the lane and making that late second pass to the open guy as the defenders crash. The Nets don't do that. I don't know what the heck, forget the guy who's a shooter. Oh, my God.
Joe Harris, Seth Curry.
Yes, Joe Harris. What is he doing? He doesn't do anything. He is useless out there. If he does not make a shot, I don't even want him on the floor. Just get him off the floor because he can't do it. He's not a great defender. He's getting eaten up on every screen. Every time I watch this guy, he's getting caught with a pick. The guy is he doesn't have the foot speed to play defense. If you don't have a guy that you can rely on the back end and give you scoring, then he needs to be off the floor. I'm sorry.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, I'm getting tired of a lot of players on this team. Joe Harris is right there near the top, but I'm getting tired of him. I'm getting tired. I love Royce O'Neal, but he's done virtually nothing. I'm getting tired of him right now. I'm getting tired of Seth Curry, who seems to appear for 5 seconds and make a couple of shots, and he does the same thing as Harris does. He disappears too. Even right. Nicholas Claxton, who I absolutely love, he's pretty much been has he played? Where's Nicholas Claxton? Where's the Nicholas Claxton that we've been watching this entire season? He's literally been an absolute non-factor in this series. I mean, I didn't think I thought Embiid is way better than him, but Claxton has been literally a no-show. He had no points last night. He had no blocks last night. He had 6 rebounds. It was so bad that they had to put him on the bench and they had to go small. If Claxton can't have the type of impact we need this team to have, the Nets are not going to win. And if Spencer Dinwiddie, who Dinwiddie keeps turning the ball over at the alarming rate that he has been turning the ball over at, if the fact that he can't create and make his own shot, and the fact of the matter is, I read a report that him and Bridges, their 3-point shooting has been horrible. Bridges is like making 9% of his 3-point shots lately, and Dinwiddie's making 22. This
Right.
team is a 3-point basketball. They're a 3-point shooting team. If they can't hit their threes, they can't beat anybody.
And that's the problem. Right. That's what we talked about with the Golden State Warriors. You live by the 3, you die by the 3. But if you don't have any other way to manufacture offense, whether that's a jump hook, a floater, something to kind of ignite you, because that's what shooters need. Shooters need some type of spark. Look at what Steph Curry does. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, and we'll get into him in a minute. When he doesn't have a 3-point shot, he drives the lane and tries to throw some floaters up in there to get his rhythm going. They don't even get to the foul line. You need the way you win in the playoffs is twofold, right? You need the offensive rebound. Okay, that's one. Mm-hmm. And you need to get to the charity stripe. That's 2. All right, because sometimes manufacturing points, when they give you free throws, you've got to figure out how to get fouls and how to make guys compromise their position, because fouls happen when there's chaos happening. When you're standing there at the top of the 3 trying to set up a play and everybody is standing there, it's not just Dinwiddie. I get Dinwiddie creating his own shot. It's the offense doesn't do anything when they don't make a move. When they just dribble up there and take that slow-paced dribble and try to set things up, that's when the Nets are at a disadvantage, because then Philadelphia can set up their defense.
Yeah, pretty much. The Nets ball movement. The Nets actually had some really good ball movement in the first half. I don't know what the hell happened to this team in the second half. I really don't.
I think playoff experience happens, man.
But I can't use that, because you look at You could look at a team in the second game that we watched last night, and that team has no playoff experience, and they look like they're a well-oiled machine. Like they've been
but they're also the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. We're the 6th seed who lost all their stars. We have no stars. We have a bunch of guys who should be role players starting at our starting 5. Okay, this team doesn't have the horses to keep up with guys when they're on, and they don't have the depth, like you said, on the bench. I mean, the bench is what kind of also helps you win in the playoffs. That's just it. What are we talking about with great teams, right? The Warriors, they had Andre Iguodala come off the bench. The Bulls, they had Steve Kerr come off the bench. You know what I mean? You have many. I can go down the line. Robert Horry for the Lakers coming off the bench. You had guys that would come off the bench and score buckets. The Nets got nobody. They got a bunch of janitors out there playing basketball, and it's really sad because I really like this team. I really like that they have these young players getting this experience, baptism by fire, so to speak. But my God, put a product out there, figure it out. If Jacques Vaughn is if he's in, I thought Steve Kerr was bad. Steve Nash was bad. Like, I'm not saying I want Steve Nash right now either, because I don't think he does. I don't think he does anything. I think Jacques Vaughn's got this team playing above their talent level. But my God, figure out how, because I think defensively they can hang occasionally. Like Cam Johnson was going off last night, and you wasted that performance from that guy who had an amazing first half to nothing. He was like the only guy out there. I'm like, the Nets are too.
It's been him and Bridges. It's him and Bridges are the only 2 guys that could score right now. Everybody else, it's just
And again, those guys are role players. They're not like, they shouldn't be your focal number ones. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they're not good players, but Bridges works better. Look what he did in Phoenix. Why did he do so well? Because he had Devin Booker and he had Chris Paul toting the mail, right? So he didn't have to do much except get open, find his spots, and make shots when he needed to. Now he's the main guy. And when you have Dinwiddie not doing, we're Net fans. So we grew up with good point guard play in our era. We had Stephon Marbury, who, like him or not, he did usher in the era of the new Nets, right? In 1998, he had Jason Williams there. They kind of got the thing started. Then in 2000, they drafted Kenyon Martin and brought over Jason Kidd, right? And they had a whole different demeanor. Now, and then the Nets bring over Darren Williams. They had Kyrie Irving. They build their offense around point guards. Dinwiddie is a good player, but again, he's a guy that is a 1 and a 2, meaning you can put him in at the 1 sometimes and he'll give you a nice breather, but he's better at 2 when he can just be off the ball and running around. When he's the facilitator, it's not working as well because he has to think, he has to slow down. It takes him away from his dribble penetration because there's nobody there that they believe can score.
No, I mean, I don't know what this team has to do going into game 3, but they might have to change up this lineup too, because what they're putting out there right now is just not working. And you said young players. Right now, the problem is Jacques Vaughn is trusting his veterans way too much. Guys like Harris, guys like O'Neal, guys like Curry. He's not giving some of these younger players an opportunity to see if maybe they can give this lineup some type of jolt. Like an Edmund Sumner, who when he's played, he's actually scored. Like a Yuta Watanabe, where he's like one of those energy type guys. Like a Cam Thomas, who every single one of the Nets fans are freaking out right now because this dude is sitting on the bench and yet he can light it up for 40 points on a given night, and he's sitting on the bench right now. But the problem is the kid can't do anything else besides score. But like the Nets need to do something right now going to this game 3 to like give him a change.
I agree with you there, but what I want to say is this. If the guy can score, you don't need him to play defense because your offense will be your defense if he can put the ball in the hole, right? If you're getting a lead, you can do that. It's called coaching. Doc Rivers right now is out-coaching Jacques Vaughn. That is whether or not you believe in talent, he is out-coaching the guy. When they make a move, they bring in other guys. He understands the flow of the game. Jacques Vaughn, like I said, this is playoff basketball. This is not regular season basketball. You can't just hope and be like, well, let me keep my veterans out there, because not only are you tiring out your veterans, but then you're not giving guys the experience that they need until garbage time, when it doesn't matter at that point. Everyone's like, oh, well, they got playoff experience. In garbage time, it doesn't matter. You know why? They take the foot off the gas. There's no pressure. There's no urgency to score buckets at that point. So now you're just on the stat sheet, and Cam Thomas, you're proud of yourself because you scored 10 points in garbage time, but we need you to figure out how you can do that between quarters 1 and quarter 3 and a half quarters. If you don't want to put them in the fourth quarter because it's critical and you want your veterans in, fine, but you got to trust your guys. They're on your roster for a reason. I take the Giants, for example, right? Dayball played a lot of rookies. Tom Coughlin did not play a lot of rookies. And what happened was it stunted their growth. Why? Because when they got into big games, they didn't know what to do. But Brian Daboll trusted his guys to make those mistakes and then learn from them. So you have to do that, Jacques Vaughn. You have to let these guys be able to float, to make those mistakes in the playoff moments. So when you go back and watch the film, you can say, hey, man, do you know what you did wrong here? Great, let's correct it for next time going forward because we're going to need you. And I don't know, I'm not in the locker room, so I can't tell you what is happening. I can just tell you what's happening on the court. And right now, the Nets are putrid, and I'm kind of just over talking about this game because I don't even think the Nets are going to win a game, to be honest with you. I think they'll give a good effort in Brooklyn, but I think the series is basically, they don't have any heart. I think they're getting their heart ripped out every night, and we'll see. We'll see if Brooklyn and that floor and that crowd, hopefully the crowd shows up for them and kind of gives them that juice.
I don't know at this point if that crowd's even going to be energized at all. I mean, they had that second game in the palm of their hands, and Philadelphia did not play a great game at all yesterday. Right. Harden was awful. Embiid really didn't do much until the second half. One of the biggest problems I have with this team now too is I'm sick and tired of the rebounding every single night. This team can't rebound, and Philadelphia is not a great rebounding team either. This Nets team is giving up second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chance opportunities every single play. I'm seeing every time the ball is either bouncing somehow to the Sixers or the Nets are just not giving enough effort on the defensive side of the ball. And the Sixers are getting multiple opportunities to be able to put up these second, third, and fourth shots. And that's the reason why that the Nets have no flow to their offense too. They just can't rebound, and it's because they're too small of a basketball team. If Nicholas Claxton is not getting around 10 rebounds a game, this Nets team cannot rebound. They're too small. Last night, they had to play small ball the entire time to see if they can use some of their athletic ability and their quickness to be able to get by this Philadelphia 76ers offense. And that ended up was working in the first half because the shots were falling. But in the second half, they couldn't operate in that offense because they just couldn't make a shot to save their lives. And then Embiid just pretty much started taking over the game. He had almost a 20-20 last night. So I don't know what's going to happen with this team in the third game. I would make some changes to the lineup. I'd start getting Cam Thomas in there. I'd get Day'Ron Sharpe in there a couple of more minutes. Get Edmund Sumner in there because Joe Harris is giving you nothing. Seth Curry is too much up and down right now. I mean, I'll keep Royce O'Neal in there because I still think his defense is good. Is a reason why I keep him in there because he's good defensively. But his shots got to start falling. But something's got to change with this team going into Game 3 on Thursday at Barclays Center because right now what they're doing is just not working.
Yeah. And on that note, we're going to move over to a better game, a more exciting game, and that is Golden State versus Sacramento. And this has been a series that has brought me back to the old school days when the Sacramento Kings were actually a good basketball team in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. They had Weber, Jason Williams, and Vlade Divac, Doug Christie, and those guys. Even Mike Bibby, once they got rid of Williams. It really brought me back, and I'm loving what DeAndre Fox is doing. I'm loving what Monk is doing. Sabonis, I have a few thoughts on him, but I'll let Jeff, get into that. But I am loving what this Kings team is doing. Let's hope they can keep it up. The Warriors last night, to me, looked a little tired. They looked a little tired that they couldn't quite get the threes to drop the way that they did in game one. And this is what we talk about when you have a bad game, right? The Kings didn't play their best effort, right? Nor did the Warriors. But at the end of the day, the Kings found a way to put buckets in the basket and keep that Warriors team at bay, even when they weren't playing. And that's a big step because if they had split this series 1-1, I don't think the Kings would have a chance to fully pull it off. I think now they're going to win in six, possibly 7 games. I think they may even steal one in Golden State, but we'll see. But Jeff, your thoughts of this game?
I mean, when I look at the Sacramento Kings, this team is so incredibly deep. I mean, this team has got you see the amount of players they play on a given night. They play 11 players on a given night because they have so much depth on this roster where they can balance out the minutes and not try to burn out any of their star players. I mean, the one player I'm going to start with first is De'Aaron Fox. I mean, this kid, I always liked De'Aaron Fox when he came out of Kentucky a few years ago, but this kid is emerging into a big-time superstar player I think it's his 4th or 5th year. He's electric with the basketball in his hands. He can knock down the outside shot, and he's proven to people that this kid is a top-level point guard in this NBA. I like Domantas Sabonis. I think that trade they made with him for Tyrese Halliburton last year, this Sabonis has absolutely transformed that team too because of his ability to not only shoot the basketball, but to rebound, to assist, to be a good playmaking power forward on this team. I mean, Harrison Barnes, that veteran guy on that roster, when you have a lot of younger players, Harrison Barnes has that championship experience. Plus, obviously, it's like a revenge game for him from the fact he played with the Golden State Warriors at the beginning of his career.
Won a championship, I think.
He did. With the first time before they got KD, Barnes was there and won a championship with Thompson, Green, and Curry. Then you also got a guy like Malik Monk who was pretty much he was dying out there with the Charlotte Hornets and with the Los Angeles Lakers. He just wasn't the type of player that's been able to do what he's doing right now. Obviously, he's from Kentucky too, back with his former teammate from Kentucky, De'Aaron Fox, and the two of them have really just built a good chemistry with one another. I mean, Davion Mitchell coming off the bench, being a good defensive point guard, and he's been able to light it up. Alex Len, remember Alex Len with the Phoenix Suns, an underachiever with that team, and all of a sudden you put him over there with the Kings. He's had a revitalization to his career. Kevin Huerter, 3-point shooter. I think the Hawks are probably regretting the fact they traded him away. But, I mean, This team is just deep. They're young. And I want to give a lot of credit to Mike Brown. And
I was going to say the same thing. Good job mentioning him.
It's the reason why this guy was coach of the year. The job that he's been doing with this team, balancing out that lineup, getting everybody a good amount of minutes. I mean, this team has just been absolutely a joy to watch. I thought this team was one of the sneakiest teams coming into the playoffs. I love this Kings team since the beginning, and I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with the rest of this playoffs. And if they somehow don't win it this year, Because I think they have a good. If they can beat the Warriors, I think they have a good chance to possibly go pretty far in this playoffs this
Well,
year.
I agree with you there. I mean, we'll maybe Denver and Phoenix may have something to say about that, but once you beat the defending champs, you probably have a good leg up on the competition. Momentum is key in the NBA playoffs. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned, Sabonis. Okay, I watch the games with Sabonis, and there's moments where I'm like, this guy needs to take over the game, right? Because his dad, I keep saying like, yo, your dad in his prime was pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
Arvidas.
he was a little washed towards the end of his career with Portland, but he would help out here and there, and obviously couldn't hang with Shaq and those guys. But when you're old and beat up, a young buck like Shaq in his prime is hard to defend. But he could do a lot of things, block shots, make some 3-pointers. But Sabonis needs to be the fire starter. He did have a decent game. The first game he was absolutely atrocious. They found a way to win without him. This game he had 24 points and almost a triple double, so good for him. But he needs to be the tone setter. Now, what I like Draymond Green, but what he did to Sabonis was dirty. Now, I don't agree with dirty play. Tough play, I don't mind. You want to get into scrap it up, you want to be hard, fine. But stepping on somebody when they're down, that's not good. That's not Draymond Green's style. He's a hard-nosed guy who gets technicals and stuff like that. That's a guy you want on your team. But when you do that, I think that was a turning point in the game for the Warriors, because now they have nobody that scares the Kings, right? They have Draymond Green does a lot for you. He plays the 4, he plays the 5. He can stretch you out. He rebounds. He brings that emotional energy. And when you lost him, you lost your guy. I think that. But Sabonis, I'm glad that he, made some shots down the stretch. He took a lot of hard fouls. I got to give him credit. He gets beat up night in and night out. The last 2 nights, the guy needs to get the cold tub ready because they were beating the heck out of him. And I don't blame him for doing that. He's playing through some injuries. I got to give him some credit, but I need a little bit more dog sometimes. I need you to be Fox. You know what I'm saying? And at one point, I said to myself, I'm watching the game, they give the ball to Fox, and I'm like, yo, just get out of that kid's way. He is not going to lose the basketball game. I said, this guy has the killer instinct he's like, listen, Sabonis, you're struggling. I'm struggling. Guess what? I'm heating up. I had the best clutch performer in the NBA all season, and it showed last night. And they have no answer for him when he is on. And I can't wait to see him at Oracle Arena, because that place is the roof is going to be blown off that place. And I want to see how this team can match up against the Warriors in a more hostile environment. But Sabonis, I just need a little bit more from you in terms of, I need to dunk on somebody, just to get that emotion going, because you can ignite that team. And because at some point, Monk is not going to be on fire. DeAndre Fox may not have a game. They're going to need to rely on him to have a huge night one night to keep them in a game. And it starts, I guess, Wednesday night.
I think Malik Monk is becoming that other dog on this team. That dude is just driving to the basket, creating his own shot, drawing fouls. He's hitting big 3-point shots. I don't know. Maybe those two, Fox and Monk, need to come back together with that Kentucky connection in the backcourt, because since those two have reunited, I mean, Monk has just become a different player. This dude is emerging as a star in the playoffs too. What he's been able to do out there, and I mean, I think what hurt the Warriors, Jordan Poole had an awful game yesterday. I mean, They need Jordan Poole to score. He was 1 for 7 in the game. They need him to be a bigger contributor offensively for that Warriors team. I mean, Wiggins has played. I love what Wiggins has been doing. The dude missed pretty much all season, and he's already been back, and he's played 2 great games. Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, I mean, you're talking about 2 of the greatest shooters of all time. They're going to go out there and they're going to make the shots,
Snipers.
Even though they put up some stupid shots
but see, but that's the thing. Those stupid shots are stupid to us, but they go in for them. Right. Yeah. I'm sitting there watching them do moon shots, 26 footers going swap through the net. Right. Meanwhile, then what I love, though, is Mike Brown. I got to give him credit because he was a laughing stock for a while with some teams, because, he was the coach with Cleveland. I think they won a championship with him. I could be wrong. But he was
I think he did with LeBron and Kyrie.
So he won a championship with them. He's been much maligned throughout his career. He spent some time with Popovich on that San Antonio staff, and I think he learned a lot from that staff and growth as a coach. And what he's done, at least for me, is he's brought that playoff mentality with him. He's calm, he's cool, he's collected, and he is showing you why he deserves to be a coach of the year. But he shows you why he's letting it happen. This team never wavered when the Warriors were doing the body shots and the counter blows and making shot after shot. This team did not crumble. Like the Nets crumbled or like the Atlanta Hawks crumbling. You know why? Because you said it perfectly. Monk is going to the line, creating shots that does so much when you're making those layups. Guys got to come in. Like the thing that annoys me about Sacramento, though, I will say this. They need a big man in there to hit somebody. You know what Draymond Green is good for? Intimidating in the rim. You needed a rim intimidator so that Steph Curry doesn't just go, oh, let me just run by you and do a little floater. He needs to second guess his layup. I don't care if you have to hard foul him every time he goes up, but make him earn those points from the charity stripe, beat him down so that his legs aren't fresh in the fourth quarter and he's taking up those shots. And I think you saw at the end of the game last night, they were starting to get a little pesky on him. When they put Monk on him, he could not do anything. When they put Sabonis on him, although sans a few plays, there was one play where Sabonis did some good defense on a switch, but Monk needs to be the guy. You need to find a guy who can go on there and not necessarily, I wouldn't say keep up is the right word, but just kind of annoy Steph Curry. Because if you don't, he reminds me of a guy like Reggie Miller or Rip Hamilton, where they're going to run you in circles. That's what they do. They're going to keep running around on the floor to find some type of open airspace and get the ball, turn around and shoot. You need to be a guy, who used to bother Rip Hamilton, a guy like a Doug Christie or a guy like a Matt Barnes, who can just doesn't have to score points, but he can just run around with you and be in your grill when you turn around and make that shot. Because what happens is he's running around these screens, Sabonis is coming off, that's a mismatch. You need to start changing your defensive sets a lot. I think Mac Brown will do that going forward, but that's the one weakness I think happens with the Kings, is that defensively they left a lot of guys open on their switches, and they need to correct that in order to sustain a winning product. Right now it's winning, but that the Warriors are championship tested, that they will find your weakness.
Well, I mean, I'm not worried about this Kings team because they're young. The thing is they're young and they're getting this playoff experience at home and pulling off some of these big wins, even in their home arena, which that place is. I got to give those Kings fans credit. They're rabid in that arena. I mean, obviously,
it's great to see.
You can't blame them when you haven't seen a playoff game since 2006, 2007. You're going to be absolutely rabid and nuts. But this team, the one thing that's scary about the Kings is that they're a really young team, and that this core is just going to continue to get built up even more and more and more and more. And nobody expected this team to be as good as they are this year. So even if they don't win it this year, this team is going to be incredibly scary going into the year beyond. They're young. They're a young team.
Is this Mike Brown's first year with them, or was he with them last year?
I think it's his first or second year, I believe. I'm not sure.
Let me look that up so we have the actual facts here.
I'm looking at this team. The oldest player on this team is like 30 years old, and they have so much young talent on this roster. I mean, Herter, Fox, Sabonis, Lyles, Mitchell, Murray.
He was with the coach. He was the coach with them in 2022 to now. So he was with the Golden State Warriors last year.
Yeah.
For 2016 to 2022 as associate head coach. So this year he started as their coach. So 1 year he won coach. This is the second time he should win coach of the year this year. He did. Yeah. NBA. He should win coach of the year. He won coach of the year in 2009. Let's look at his background. He was a Wizards assistant. Then he went to San Antonio, learned under Popovich, went to the Pacers, then was Cleveland for a while, then went to the Lakers and got laughed out the building there. And then he went back to Cleveland and helped them. I think they helped them win they didn't help them win the championship, but he had a lot of playoff wins with them. But he won a lot of championships with, the Golden State Warriors. So
yeah.
We'll see what happens. But to me, it's just this is what you want to see in a coach who's come a long way, who's paid his dues, who's had been much maligned, learned from Steve Kerr as a head coach, learned from Greg Popovich as a head coach, and you're starting to see the fruits of their labor right? And I really am liking that right now. And I bid them nothing but good tidings. I hope they win because Jeff, I agree with you. If they beat Golden State, the sky's the limit. You just beat the defending champs. Don't be afraid of anybody. Don't be afraid of anybody. And if those two guys, Fox and Monk, are playing, they can play with anybody in the East, and they can match up pretty well.
I'd throw Sabonis in there too. Sabonis is another guy. I mean, the dude didn't have a great game. He still scored 24 points. I mean,
right. And I think it's because of how they're defending him. This Warrior team, the problem is Looney, he's playing center, and they don't have a true center. And when you put Sabonis at the center position and a guy like Looney who's very, very tough to open competition. Sorry. When he's very tough about like Looney shouldn't be doing what he's doing, but he's a veteran. He understands angles, he understands rebounding, and he's obviously out muscling of Sabonis. So they need to figure out a guy who can come in there and help free him up, get a center in there. I don't know if they got some guys injured, but when you play, their game is built.
Well, they have Alex Len. Alex Len is their backup center. I mean, but Sabonis is 7 foot. He should not be getting muscled around all over the place. He should be able to hold his own.
Right, but if you put in Alex Len, you can move Sabonis to a guy who's small like Draymond Green, who yes will be pesky, but you have that length to shoot over him. Looney is just a strong guy, and sometimes like they match up well against Phoenix. Djokovic is probably gonna give him trouble because that guy is just an absolute monster out there. Right. Yeah. So that's the one team. If they do get past them, they'll have some trouble. I don't think Minnesota they'll worry about Memphis. The Lakers, I think they'll be able to beat the Lakers. So I think they can beat a lot of teams. We'll see what happens. But beating Golden State, if they can steal at least one of the next 3 games at Golden State, right?
I'm not even convinced that the Suns are going to beat the Clippers. I think the Suns showed some incredible warts in that first game they played against the Clippers. So I don't even know about the Suns yet.
We'll see. The Clippers have showed me they're battle tested, and Kawhi Leonard is pretty good. Still, we need to give him some credit where credit's due. He's changed that Clippers team to give them more respectability, and they're coming out and showing you why they deserve to be in the playoffs. And Phoenix, this is a problem with Phoenix. This is what happened with them their 3 years, right? The first year they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Warriors. And then next year they went to the finals and they lost to Milwaukee, right? Because they just could not hang with that team, right? And then this year they're coming back, and right now I don't know what it is, whether it's a KD effect, whether it's just they don't have a killer instinct. Something's
the too finesse of a basketball team, and they lack depth.
That's a regular season type of basketball team in my eyes.
Oh,
when you're a finesse team, you cannot win finesse, especially when your guys aren't dropping dimes. Like the reason why Fox is doing so well is because he's creating off the dribble. They're dropping points, and right now, they play defense, and when you play defense, that's what happens to you on the back end. Your best defense, sometimes defense leads to good offense, good scoring. So,
and look at that Phoenix team. I think Chris Paul is way over the hill. Devin Booker's a great shooter, but he can't defend. And I think DeAndre Ayton is one of the softest 7-foot men centers I've ever seen. The dude is just afraid to take the ball to the basket, and he's too busy trying to be a jump shooter instead of using his 7-foot frame to try to body down against one of those, against a Zubac or against a Plumlee over there in L.A. I mean, Durant's obviously the one guy that has the playoff experience, but I don't trust the rest of those players on that team. Even Russell Westbrook, who couldn't make a damn shot to save his life in that first game. He's going out there, making huge block shots and throwing the ball for Devin Booker at the end of that game, and he's making big plays. So he's the point guard getting 10-plus rebounds. So I don't trust that Phoenix Suns team. I think they're way too finesse, and it happened last year when they were the number 1 seed, and they couldn't even get past the Dallas Mavericks with just Luka. So I don't trust that Suns team at all. They lack in depth, and they lack in heart.
Right. I think that's a lot to do with Monty Williams. I like Monty Williams, but he obviously is like, you have to have a killer instinct in the playoffs. Yes. And KD, while KD is good, I love KD. Sometimes he's a passive aggressive kind of guy. He doesn't want to be. Not that he doesn't want to be the dog or the guy. It's not that he can't do that. It's sometimes he just is a bit of. he just needs to kind of take over. And if he does, and sometimes when he takes over, other players kind of just sit back and watch. They don't have what it takes, the chops to get going. But we'll see what happens. I think
LeBron James does that too. He does that sometimes too, where he becomes too passive and he tries to just let others try to take over the game. I hear what you're saying on that one.
Right. Well, the thing is that like Jordan, Kobe, even like a guy like Fox right now. When you saw Fox last night, he said in the fourth quarter, "Give me the rock. Yeah. I am going to win." Why is he the clutchest player in the game? Because he does not want his team to lose. He has ice in his veins, and he's like telling you, "Look, give me the ball. I don't care if I'm 0 for 16. I'm going to make these shots down the stretch." And KD needs to do that. Sometimes I think KD gets in his own way, in his own head. And you would think right now with Paul, Booker, and Stafford.
Ayton.
Not Stafford. Excuse me. I'm sorry. NFL Network's on. The Stafford came on. Kevin Durant. You think this team will be better? And Ayton, don't even get me started with that guy. He's like Joel Embiid for the West for me. One minute you're like, yo, this guy's going to the Hall of Fame. The next minute you're like, where are you? You're in a milk box somewhere. And the guy that big should not – that guy every night should be averaging close to a triple-double every night. The NBA, they don't even play the same center position like they did 10 or 15 years ago. This guy should be averaging a double-double, almost a triple-double a night. The fact that this guy, is where he is, it annoys me because I see a guy like that and I'm like, yo, what if I were his coach, yo, I would just be like, yo, don't take any jump shots, crash, because the reason they lost in their playoff game was he had a good game, but there were times where he was just absent. There are guys that are smaller than him grabbing boards, and I'm like, dude, you're the biggest guy on the floor. You're the most physically imposing guy on the floor. Become that guy. I don't know whether it's coaching in the little league level. I have no idea what it is, but it really irks me because when I grew up playing basketball, rebounding was a thing. And the best rebounding guy that I grew up watching was like, you had Akeem Olajuwon. He wasn't getting bodied out. You had Shaq. He isn't getting bodied out. You had Dennis Rodman. They weren't getting bodied out. You know what I'm saying? They didn't care about scoring points. They were difference makers on the defensive end, and their points were tip-ins, putbacks, and slams. You don't need to, like Joel Embiid, the thing that frustrates me about that guy is like, I don't need you to take threes. I need you to get 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 blocks. You know what I'm saying? That's what you need to do. That should be your night. I don't care if it's 10 blocks, 10 rebounds, and 10 points. I need you to be that enforcer. And when you're that big, they should be doing this. Devon Booker should be on one end, Kevin Durant should be on the other end, and Ayton should be down in the post while Chris Paul is setting up the offense.
Yeah, pretty much. I can't complain about Embiid, what he did last night. The guy almost had a 20-20.
Right, and that's what you need every night. And he's coming through, but I'm not really sold on Embiid and that team. I'm sure that once they hit a better competition team, they're going to, falter down that stretch. But we can move on to some of the games tonight. I think the Knicks are going to surprise some people. They played well in game 1. Let's see if they can do that in game 2. I think Brunson was really a good effort.
Well, did you hear about the injury news about Josh Hart? It sounds like he's not going to play.
Oh. Well,
yeah, he had suffered an ankle injury. I didn't even know that until Coach actually told me about it last night, that he had an ankle injury and that apparently swelled up the day after, and he looks like he's doubtful. So that's a monster blow if he can't play tonight.
Yeah, that will be a blow because he's a good defensive player and he gives them some scoring on the other end. So we'll see what happens. I mean, really, it's really what the Cavaliers got to do. Their center's got to come to play. Mobley got to come and score some points when you got them. You got to have guys contribute. Again, the center, you're seeing right now what's happening. A lot of these guys are facilitating, penetrating, making moves. We'll see what happens with the Cavaliers. I think Brunson's going to be the difference in this series. If he can do what he did in game 1, the Knicks are going to be advancing in the playoffs because he is the facilitator. You're seeing what happens when good point guards get their shots and get to their spots. They can change the dynamic of the game.
I agree with that. I agree with that too.
As for the other game, the other couple games that are going on today, you have the Hawks Celtics. I think the Hawks are outmatched by the Celtics. I think the Celtics are on a mission. I think the series ends in 4 games. I don't think the Hawks have a chance, and unless Trae Young happens to do Trae Young things and balls out. But you can't always see. The problem is when you rely on that, you can't expect it every night. And then it becomes one
Mm-hmm.
of those things. I always talk about the Yankees. When you rely on your home runs and they don't come through, and you don't have anything else, you're done. Right. It's
Yeah.
same thing with the Nets last night. When you didn't hit the 3 pointers, you're stuck. Right. So to me, I'm looking at it like this. I'm not even worried about Celtics. I don't even think the Celtics play their B game and probably steal one today. I think they'll give. I think Atlanta will be a little better because obviously adjustments are made. Hopefully, I like their coach, but we'll see what happens. And then the Clippers Suns tonight. We already kind of mentioned that. The Suns got to win this game, otherwise, I think the series is over. I think the series will be done. Believe it or not, I think it's going to be hard for them to overcome in LA. And this team seems like they have no heart, and they kind of get down on themselves and such. So we'll see.
Would you fire Monty Williams if this team underachieves and they go out quietly in this first round?
It's tough to say because coaches are hard in the NBA. Who are you going to replace him with? What are you going to bring Steve Nash back? You know what I mean? Find D'Antoni again and say, hey, what are you doing? Sitting on a
that's
boat
3 years in a row that this team is underachieved.
Well, part of that is the players mostly. It's not like I don't think Monty Williams is making gaffes as a coach. I really don't. I think he's putting in guys trying to adjust. And when you got Ayton not showing up, and you have Booker who's streaky sometimes, and you have Chris Paul who's past his prime, and you're relying on him to be a scorer, right? And then Kevin Durant doesn't show up. Like, I would probably fire him this year because you have Kevin Durant, you traded for him, you have Chris Paul, you have 4 guys who are probably, if not Hall of Famers, at least all-star players out there. And you underachieve to a Clippers team who, while they have some talent, are not you, right? Are not you. So they got to find it out. They got to find out right now what they're going to do, and we'll figure it out. I'm not worried about it, but it's a tough call because you fire him and you get nobody, and they underachieve next year. You know what are we talking about, right? But without Monty Williams, they're not where they are, right? Remember, he came in as an interim coach and kind of led that team and figured it out. So we'll see. Maybe you give him one more year and say, hey, listen, you didn't have Kevin Durant at the beginning of the year. Let's have him at the beginning of the year this season. Let's see if we can get all these guys together. But, basketball, here's one thing that people don't factor in with basketball. A lot of these playoff teams, when they end their season, they don't have much time from their off season to relax, right? So they're playing a lot. There's a lot of older veterans out there running the floor, and you don't get any younger, and your body doesn't get any newer. So when you're playing constantly in the playoffs like this team has, you get tired, you get fatigued. That's why I think Sacramento is having a field day with the Warriors, because they are a younger team, they're fresher, they haven't been in the playoffs, which it really does matter in the long run. That's why Golden State, is Golden State, because they have their shooters. They can overcome some of that, but fatigue is a factor. We'll find out today. But to answer your question, I think I would fire Monty Williams just because of his roster that he has assembled. The other thought process is, hey, give him one more year and fire him after next year. But the NBA, they'll give him a year. They'll underachieve halfway through the year. He'll get fired. The intern coach will make them a playoff team, and then they'll hire that guy like they did with Atlanta with Nate McMillan. They fired his guy. All of a sudden, they bring in another coach, and, here we are. So, but let's move on a little bit. Let's see what we got here in the comments. Coach Dante, what's going on?
Hey, Coach
Gladney, what's going on? I think we mentioned about Mobley stepping his game up. Brunson is, like I said, is the key factor. He's playing out of his mind. He's playing great playoff basketball. The Knicks haven't had a guy like this in a while, and I think he's the star of the team. I know they have JT Barrett, they have Randall, but I think this guy makes those guys better because they don't need to rely on getting their own shots, because he's going to be the creator. We talk about Jason Kidd. We talk about guys like that. Point guards that can create their own shot, score, and facilitate the basketball. My God, those are the key weapons. I mean, look what Nash did back in the day. He wasn't a great defender, but he could create his own shot. And he was able to set up Amari Stoudemire and all those guys going forward. But let's move on to something that's more pressing. The news that dropped yesterday, mid-afternoon, if you didn't hear about it and you were sleeping under a rock, that is the Eagles paying Jalen Hurst, and boy, was it a topic in our chat, Jeff. Tempers, I wouldn't say tempers were flying, but opinions were flying left and right. I'd love to hear your take, and I have some thoughts on why he's getting paid. I'd love to hear your thoughts first.
Well, I mean, he's pretty much getting paid because after the season he had last year, and they really believe in that he's a quarterback that's on the ascension right now because of this talent and his skill set that he was able to throw out there last year. Now, a lot of people could say that the reason with RJ Barrett, that's a good one, coach. But I think the reason why with Jalen Hurts, a lot of people think that this kid is just getting better and better in terms of his overall play going forward. So, I mean, he did a great job with his adjustments throwing the basketball, and I mean, I just think it was a horrendous overpay when it came to paying Jalen Hurts. But I get it, the quarterback position, it is what it is now. Quarterbacks are going to get paid a ridiculous amount, but they're taking a chance on paying him that amount of money because they believe in his skill set and that he's going to continue to evolve as a quarterback going forward. So,
well, actually, somebody showed me a text. Let me see if I can bring it up. I don't think Jalen Hurts gets overpaid. Why? Because you brought your team to the Super Bowl. Let me bring up some examples. Jimmy Garoppolo got paid after he brought the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl. Jared Goff got paid after he brought his team to the Super Bowl, right? So, yes, I know that somebody in our chat, Mac, the Giant fan, was complaining about he got overpaid and how's he paid before Burrow and Herbert. I'll tell you why. One, because those guys are on their rookie deals. So they still have time. They have a fifth-year option that they both got extended on. So those teams don't have to necessarily – per se, extend the contract. Jalen Hurts' last season was this season. This season coming up was his last in his career, right, with the Eagles. So if he doesn't get paid, he's a free agent, which probably means he's getting another number from somebody else or astronomical. This was a contract extension. So, yes, he's going to get paid because, remember, he came in 2020. That's one season. 2021, he was a starter. That's a 2 season. 2022 is season 3, and this is season 4 in 2023. So his contract is up on a rookie deal. So he had to get paid now, and they did the deal now. Yes, maybe it'll hurt them down the road, but we'll find out. We'll find out if they made the wrong move. But he has a no trade clause, which is kind of interesting. So this is what I brought up, right? Jalen Hurts. Apparently, the birds blitz. Salary cap hit over the next 4 years. Jalen Hurst, $6.15 million. 2024, $13.56 million. 2025, $20.77 million. And 2026, he gets paid $31.7 million. Daniel Jones, $21 million in 2023, $45 million in 2024, $39.5 million in 2025, and in 2026, if he makes it that far, $56 million. Now, here's what I talked about, and this is what kind of got me upset yesterday in the chat, okay? So we're talking about how this compares to Daniel Jones and why they gave this guy the bag, right? They are committed to him. He has a no-trade clause. He has guaranteed money, $179 million. His contract goes up until 2026. So he's here for a long time. And this is what I keep telling you guys about Daniel Jones. If the Giants were to believe in this guy, you do this, no questions asked. You give the same kind of contract to Daniel Jones. No trade clause, 5 years, no doubt about it. The fact you have it out after 2 years tells me exactly what needs to be. And something got brought up yesterday in our chat. Mac used the word, Daniel Jones got paid like an average QB. In which case, I blew a gasket because every week I was telling you that guy was average. So now you're telling me that Daniel Jones is an average QB and they paid him as such. Well, guess what? That's not what we were fighting about for the last year and a half. Everybody that I came in contact with told me this guy is better. He's going to be an MVP candidate. He's going to be this. He's going to be that. I just gave those. Coach, you want me to replay them or do you need them again? The cap hit for Jalen Hurts, before I go on my rant real quick, because I brought it up, and I don't know how official these are, but someone sent me this Twitter account. Jalen Hurts in 2023, $6 million. 2024, $13 million. 2025, $21 million. And in 2026, $31 million. Daniel's got 21, 45, 39, and 56 over the same time span. Now, what pisses me off is when you tell me that the guy is average, you paid him as an average quarterback, and now you're like, well, we're hoping he's going to be better. No, that's unacceptable in my eyes. That's unacceptable to say that. Yeah, you may say that Jalen Hurts got paid. He had to get paid. It just had to happen because of his contract. And Joe Burrow and Herbert will get paid in the next few months in the year. They will be paid, trust me, handsomely as well. Okay? So to me, the fact that somebody told me in a chat, a good friend of mine telling me that, oh, they paid Daniel Jones as an average quarterback is not what I got beaten down about every week when I told you he was average. You can't tell me he's average and then pay him that much money and then say, well, he got paid like an average quarterback. No, that's unacceptable. I will not take that answer because he has to be better than that. And if that's what you're going to say and lean on that excuse, well, then my argument was made for me. You just made my point. And Jeff knows I've been beating the drum on how, maybe this guy is average. If this guy was so average, which the Giants have not committed long-term to him, he has a 2-year guaranteed deal, and then the last 2 years are optional. This is the argument I've been making to everyone after they were like, well, Daniel's going to come back. I said, well, if you want to commit to him, you got to show me, and you got to put it in the contract. The fact that they have an out after 2 years, well, yes, it's good business, but it also tells me you don't fully believe in the guy. Because Jalen Hurts, look at this, 5 years, they dropped all that on him. They're expecting you not only to win the championship, but to be here long term. Now, somebody else got me fired up in the chat where they were like, well, Jalen Hurts needs to win the Super Bowl. No, he doesn't. What Jalen Hurts does is he gives you the chance to be in the dance every year. That's why you pay those guys. You think Joe Burrow, you think the Bengals are not going to pay Joe Burrow if he doesn't win a Super Bowl? Give me a break. You think they're not going to pay Justin Herbert? No, it gives you what franchise quarterbacks do is gives you a chance every year. And you have to make that sacrifice to pay them because that's what you believe. Now, Jalen Hurts had a good season. Do you want to put it on that he had help with A.J. Brown? Fine. But my argument right now is with what was talked about to me in two different chats. One, that Jalen Hurts has to win a Super Bowl. I don't believe that's the case. He just has to be in the dance, in the playoffs every year, at least, giving them a chance. And the other thing is Daniel Jones. When you tell me that he's average, that's not what I want to hear, especially after I've been fighting every day I shouldn't say fighting. I should say saying my piece about Daniel Jones being average. That just blew a gasket to me, because if that's what you think, that they paid him as an average quarterback, which I told you he was average, and everyone's like, oh, no, he wasn't. Guess what? Ryan Tannehill's average. But we hate to compare averageness with averageness. If I told you that Ryan Tannehill, if Daniel Jones had the same number as Ryan Tannehill had with A.J. Brown, 3,800 yards and 33 touchdowns, you guys be putting him in the MVP race.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into the whole Daniel Jones stuff.
No, I'm not trying to.
No, I know. It's just,
I'm just saying that we're talking about Jalen Hurts and getting paid, right? And people are saying that he's overpaid. And I said, how is he overpaid? The guy brought his team to a Super Bowl. Sans one play in the Super Bowl. If he doesn't have that fumble in the Super Bowl, he is probably the Super Bowl MVP. They're probably winning that game. And let's not forget the defense didn't do a damn thing to stop Kansas City in the second half. Okay, no. He outperformed Patrick Mahomes in the biggest game of his career, minus one play. Okay, now I'm not going to hold that against him because he overcame that in many, many plays throughout that game. It wasn't that one play, yes, while it cost them the game and could have been the tail of the tape, wasn't the reason they lost that football game. Okay, there's many other factors that went into it. James Bradbury hold, that could have been a big play. You know, the fact that they didn't get to Patrick Mahomes at all. The guy's jersey was cleaned all day long. You know, the fact that the defense brought in Vic Fangio to stop this guy, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Meanwhile, that team led the league in sacks last year. They didn't even sack Mahomes. So, yes, we can be mad, but if you look at the game overall, he had a better game than Mahomes. He arguably had an MVP-like season. Minus the 2 games he was out, which the Eagles lost, by the way, okay? He could have had over 4,000 yards passing and maybe close to 1,000 yards rushing. That is insane to think. Now, I know that Patrick Mahomes blew the doors off and he's on his own pedestal. But this is what happens when you have a guy go to the Super Bowl. And guess what, folks? He is now the standard bearer for what the NFL will look for, okay? If Daniel Jones is average, everyone's going to be looking for their Jalen Hurts, because they know that they can get a Jalen Hurts. That guy was picked in the second round, okay? There are tons of Jalen Hurts in these type of drafts. There are. And then the next draft coming up, I can give you 2 or 3 guys who are close to that.
It's kind of funny you say that because apparently Hendon Hooker is visiting the Giants today.
Right. He is visiting the Giants today. What does that tell you? Why are they bringing in Hendon Hooker when you have signed Daniel Jones? That's my point. Okay? That's what I'm saying. You never don't do your due diligence. I get it. But the optics are the optics. You can't tell me that there's somebody like me out there going, why are they bringing him in? What does he do that Daniel doesn't do? And Daniel can, and we're not going to talk, I'm not going to spend the whole time talking about Daniel because I'm sick of that guy. If people know who he is, I'm just comparing the contracts that were signed and what the difference is between giving a guy franchise money and giving a guy average quarterback money because you're doing him a favor because he, went through a bunch of bullshit, right? If Jalen Hurst gets to the playoffs and is out, I don't think he gets the money that he gets, but because you brought your team to the Super Bowl, yes, he gets it. And that no trade clause is huge. That means he can dictate where he wants to go in the next few years, okay, if he wants to.
Well, I might set you off with this one, but the reason why a lot of people are saying that they're going to say that Jalen Hurts was horrendously overpaid or don't think he's that great because they're going to say, well, he's got A.J. Brown, he's got Devontae Smith, he's got Dallas Goedert, he's got a great offensive line. That's the reason why he was that good. Daniel Jones had no offensive line. He had no playmakers. He only had Saquon Barkley. You know what's going to happen. Just saying.
I understand, Coach, they need a future backup, but Hendon Hooker is a guy that can push Daniel Jones as a starter. You know what I'm saying? Hooker. What we need in this game is not a Tyrod Taylor. We need a guy who's going to come in and do many of the same functions as Daniel Jones. Hendon Hooker does that. But what it also does is if Daniel Jones is getting overpaid, you can say, hey, I'm trading you because I have Hendon Hooker on a smaller contract. Everything's a business decision. The Eagles are invested in Jalen Hurts. And I'll tell you what, you can tell me all you want about A.J. Brown and all that bullshit. You still got to make the plays. You still got to make the throws. Okay? I think people forget about this, right? Go watch Jerry Rice highlights, right? Go watch who's throwing him the ball. There were throws that Joe Montana was making in his highlight reel, and there's a whole half-hour segment on Jerry Rice's career. You can go watch it. I was watching it the other day, and I'm watching Jerry Rice blow by these guys, but then I'm looking at Joe Montana throwing the ball to dimes all over the field, and it's like, this is why you pay that guy. The weakness about Daniel Jones is his passing game, right? So I don't care that you bring guys here. What Jalen Hurst, you saw what the impact he had in the game. You saw it. You saw what he can do. You see what he's done as a passer. He's come a long way. I think he's come a long way than Daniel Jones. Now, we can argue, well, Daboll, second system, whatever. I get it. I understand that. But I also told you that A.J. Brown played for the Tennessee Titans and made an average quarterback still average in Ryan Tannehill. I don't need to go over the numbers. I went over them a lot. My point is what I want to see is elite play. The thing that we got from Eli Manning while he was ho-hum and, had injuries and things like that, that guy was clutch. The reason why we paid Eli, his clutch gene. He used to get us out of jams. He may not have thrown gaudy numbers, but you give that guy the ball in 2 minutes to go down 4, I put my money on us winning.
No, exactly. Absolutely 100%.
Hurst did a lot of that too. The Colts game comes to mind. They're getting beat down. By this time, remember, that Colts team was still fighting for something. They still had something to play for. They still had Frank Wright as their coach, and that Eagle team went down there, and guess who drove them down the field in a big game? He was the main reason those teams played. Daniel Jones, you can argue that Saquon Barkley had a bigger impact in some of these games than Daniel Jones did.
No, you're not wrong about that one. In some games he did. Some games Jones had the bigger factor. Some games that Barkley had the biggest factor.
And I'll tell you right now, they are going to be using Darren Waller as their number one guy. Okay? So if they draft a guy, whoever that is, if it's Addison, if it's A.T. Perry, if it's Cedric Tillman, it doesn't matter. Waller is going to be the guy. They are going to feature a more pass-oriented offense this year and try to rely on Daniel Jones less in his legs. His legs were a factor. It helped him kind of overcome some things and utilize those things. But I think we need to go back to what Pat Shurmur did with Daniel Jones and make the passing game, because I didn't draft a quarterback to run. That's a trait that you want to have. Jalen Hurst became a better passer. Remember, the knock on Hurst was, can he pass? Can he pass? The Eagle fans were like, this guy stinks. He can't pass for worthless shit. He went out, he got better as a passer, and then they brought in these guys, and he's throwing dimes all over the field right now. So you got to give Hurst credit where it's due. You can't just subject that. For Daniel Jones, the Giants made their choice. They decided to go with Daniel Jones over Barkley. I believe Barkley was more of the focal point last year. I think the last 2 seasons he's been the focal point. I think Jason Garrett came in 2021 or 2021, I think it was, where he came in and they tried to build the offense around Barkley, okay, in 2021 because Daniel Jones came in, they got injured. Barkley got injured that year, was out. He comes back in 2021, and they were trying to build their offense around Barkley. And that's what you saw in those 2 seasons. That's what you saw is them predominantly doing it. This year, it didn't work out for Jason Garrett the way it was supposed to, but for Brian Dable, it worked out because they rode him. The Tennessee game, yes, Daniel had a couple catch passes, but if Saquon Barkley doesn't have a go off in that game and have a 68-yard run and catch some passes and score some touchdowns, we don't win that game. Okay? We don't. And you're going to see now 150-yard games aren't going to win these games. There's a bullseye on our back, and we need to overcome because Jalen Hurts did that. He overcame the defense's kind of gearing towards him, right? The Eagles offense, like I said to you, they're built on 5-yard increments. Okay, if they get 5 yards on their first play, you're done because their whole offensive playbook is open. They can do anything. When they get in trouble, that's where they try to ad-lib a little bit. But the thing is this, what I'd like to look down, and I don't have the breakdown in front of me. Maybe somebody can find it in the chat. I'd like to see the breakdown of runs between Daniel Jones scrambling and Daniel Jones on actual RPOs.
That's a good point. Let's see if I can look that up. The difference between the 2 of them, because I think a lot of them had to do with. I think some of them had to do with him scrambling out, doing the bit back. There was a lot of pass rush on the outside, especially from that right side. So let me see.
Well, Jeff, that's what I'm talking about. It's the what have you done for me lately? Because Jalen Hurts had designed runs, not just scrambles. Daniel Jones did a lot of his running scrambling because the defense was playing man on his team now, and they didn't put a spy on him. But what I did see happen to him in the Eagles game was they put a spy on him with Hassan Reddick and number 43. I forget who that was. But he
43. TJ, was it TJ Edwards?
Yeah, no, not Edwards or 57. I know where we're going with it. I think we're on the same page, but they put a spy on Daniel. Now the thing is, I'm not trying to bash Daniel. It's not, I'm over Daniel Jones. Whatever he does, great. Who cares? I don't really care. Like Daniel Jones to me is what he is. Average. Like he gets paid. He's average. Okay? And so Jalen Hurts right now has been muscled up. And we'll see what the Eagles do. And I don't want to hear about this. Someone said, well, the Eagles are done. They can't do anything. They won't have any money. They still have Jeffrey Lurie. They still have Howie Roseman, right?
Yes, they do.
Which means to me, they still have the GM in place. And as long as that guy is there, he's going to figure out how to manipulate the cap to keep this team relative. And oh, by the way, they have 2 draft picks going forward right now. Okay, in the top 10. One in the top 10 and then one down the stretch. So we can't just say, oh, the Eagles are going to be bad, because who do they really lose? Vernon Hargraves? Like, they have Darius Slay still. They still have James Bradbury. They've got Jordan Davis to replace Hargraves. They've got Nakobe Dean to replace TJ Edwards. Okay. Maybe they got Blankenship to play for that safety. Their defense is still there. They got a new defensive coordinator who, by the way, they hated their defensive coordinator last year. Okay. But somehow he ended up having sacks all over the case. They hated their offensive coordinator last year. They got a new offensive coordinator now. So there's going to be some adjustments, but I don't think this team has fallen off any bit. If anything, this team has remained the same. Now it's going to be, I believe, it's going to be between them and the Cowboys for winning the division. The Giants, unfortunately, folks, I don't think they're right there yet. I think they'll compete. I think they'll be there, but I think they overachieved last year, and I think they'll come back down to earth. I still think they're going to win 9 games, but now the narrative is going to change now. Because nobody's going to be surprised by the New York Giants. Nobody's going to be surprised by their coaching staff anymore. They understood that the smoke and mirrors are over. You need to now figure out how to beat them. And I think they're going to try to lean on Daniel Jones more so as a passer. We'll see.
No, I think they're going to try to open it up a lot more compared to what they did last year because of the fact they have more offensive talent now in the skill positions. And that's a nice comment, by the way, Coach.
Oh,
and I agree with that 100%. But I think it's also because at the Dayball, Kafka, these guys want to open up this offense going into 2023. And now when you got a Darren Waller, you can go out there and command the double teams. And you got speed wide receivers out there. I think it's going to make this team a lot more of a passing team going into 2023 and more of a spread offense. So we're really going to see how Daniel Jones is going to be able to operate in terms of passing the football a lot more. It's going to make Saquon Barkley more of a secondary player. Well, I wouldn't say secondary player, but he's going to be more of like not as the focal point because I think they're going to be trying to pass it on more first and second downs compared to what they did before. And obviously we got to hope the offensive line can hold up for the most part going into this upcoming season too because Evan Neal's going to have to show a vast improvement. We're going to have to get improvement from guys like Marcus McKeithen when he comes back, Joshua Zudu, Shane Lemieux, Ben Bredesen, whoever we get at center in this draft, whoever it is. Andrew Thomas is going to have to stay healthy and get. I like the fact that he said he's getting stronger right now. He's adding more upper body strength to go up against some of those power rushers on the outside. So,
who is this?
Andrew Thomas. He's adding more. He's adding more muscle now in terms of going up against more power rushers on the outside, which I like. Because I'm not worried about his speed. He's got a good first step where he can handle the speed rushers. He's just got to be able to add a little bit more muscle mass on the outside too. And Evan Neal, I think he's one of the people taking Evan Neal under his wing because he wants to become more of a leader now in this upcoming season. So I think he's taking that leadership role more in his 4th season. So he's going to maybe take Evan Neal under his wing and try to help him out in terms of his evolution at that right tackle position. So.
Well, you made a great point. I want to make one point, and then we'll move on to the draft. The reason the Eagles also can pay Hurst is because they don't have guys coming up like Andrew Thomas or Dexter Lawrence,
Or Xavier McKinney, too.
And Xavier McKinney that you're going to have to pay big contracts to going forward. I love Andrew Thomas. I was glad they picked him. Dave Gettleman era still lives on. Again, I told those people the story about my friend chastising me when I told him that Andrew Thomas could be the best tackle in this draft. He was like, oh, the Giants picked the safe pick. Well, guess what? He's arguably an all-pro. I'm glad he's getting upper body strength. That means his ankle is fully healthy and he can finally lift. This has been the first season that he hasn't undergone ankle surgery or had to rehab anything, so that's good for Andrew Thomas. So we'll see what happens. But getting into the draft, before we dive into that, there was something I was watching on NFL Network, which I thought was hilarious. The Cowboys had a chance to draft Randy Moss in 1998, and they were like, oh, he's too much of a character concern to draft him. And I'm like, wait, you're the Dallas Cowboys. You've had character concerns all year. You drafted Micah Parsons last year with character concerns. This was something that I didn't think I would see coming, and it was on NFL Network's the biggest draft day misses of all time, and this was one of them. And I thought it was hilarious to see and think back and reminisce, like, man, they had a chance to have Randy Moss on their team, and they were like, oh, we're the Cowboys. We don't like his character. And meanwhile, he goes on Thanksgiving Day to have 3 touchdowns, 151 yards, and absolutely roast them for not picking him.
And meanwhile, they draft Michael Irvin, too.
Right, they had Michael Irvin. But that year they didn't draft Michael. I forget who they drafted that year. It eludes me, but they've had guys. Nate Newton got in trouble. Michael Irvin got in trouble. You talk
Randy Gregory.
Right, they've had a history of character. I mean, Greg Hardy. Let's be honest.
Yes,
they've had a history of troubled athletes, and the one athlete who had petty crimes and smoked a little marijuana in college, and maybe I don't know what else he had. I don't know if there was a domestic dispute or something. You didn't take him. And it bit you in the ass, and it's haunted you ever since he's been in the playoffs. Because that guy not only was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he went on to have break most of the receiving records except for He couldn't touch Jerry Rice because Jerry Rice is a unicorn. He played till he was like 40 years old. But I just thought it was funny to see and reminisce about that moment because the Cowboys, for the one time in their history of their career, were too highbrow to pick a player. Meanwhile, they had Jimmy Johnson and all those knuckleheads back in the day. So.
Dallas took Greg Ellis that draft, who's a pretty decent outside linebacker, but not Randy Moss.
Ellis. Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who transcended the receiving game to a guy who was out the league and not even a great sack artist. Yeah, he was a solid player for the Cowboys, but if they can do it again, I guarantee you they're taking Randy Moss.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of teams pick him,
especially because I think they still had Troy Aikman that year. I think in '98 they still had Aikman was still around, and you could have brought him in there. I think Irvin was gone at this time. I think in '97, '98 is when he hurt himself at the vet. With the helmet thing in the back problem getting carted off in Philadelphia. But in 1998, that was, and everyone's leaning towards it. And it's funny because they had Denny Green on this one, and Denny Green goes, we're gonna be picking you. Denny Green's like, we're gonna be picking you. Randy Moss like, what are you talking about? I'm not gonna last that long. And there he was sitting there, and Denny Green made the choice, and it's interesting to see because they're doing a lot of draft day things on NFL Network. And another one that was interesting was Tim Tebow. Nobody thought that guy was going to be a first round pick. And here comes Josh McDaniels thinking that he knows more than the entire NFL. And he goes and picks Tim Tebow. And boy, was that a bust, a colossal bust. Thankfully, he was a 21st pick or something like that. So it wasn't like a top 10. But man, you want to talk about a draft day blunder, that's one of them. And so with that being said, the Giants pick at number 25. Well, we can throw some names around that you're hearing, your thoughts on who they may go, what direction they may go in. Jeff, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
Well, first I want to just say this breaking news that just happened, and it's concerning Damar Hamlin. Apparently he's been cleared to fully return back to football activities, which is a beautiful thing to hear.
That's good for him.
Great to hear. After what that kid had to go through and the nightmare that we had to watch in that game with the Cincinnati Bengals, the fact that this kid is not only 100% healthy, but he's able to continue his football career is nothing short but a beautiful thing to see. So just had to throw that out there. That just broke. Damar Hamlin has been cleared to continue his football activities. He's going to be able to continue his football career with the Bills. So in terms of what I think the Giants are going to do with the draft, let's see. Well, obviously, everybody right now is pounding the table because they want a center. Everybody wants an offensive lineman, and they want a center in this NFL draft. And while I agree, I do believe when we get to Thursday of next week, center is definitely going to be one of the prime positions that the Giants are going to look to possibly try to bring in terms of the NFL draft. I don't think they should go that route. I don't think they should go offensive line in that first round with their pick. I don't. And in my opinion, I think the Giants are going to go one of three ways. And it might surprise you a little bit. I think they're going to go A, and I think this is going to become more likely. I don't know how you feel about it, Adam, but I think this is going to become more likely. I think the Giants might trade back. I know Coach has been throwing it out there for a while that he thinks the best option for the Giants is to trade out of that first round pick, because there's so much supreme talent that's going to be around in that second, third, and fourth round that you could trade back, maybe get into like the way back end of the first round or even early second. You get another pick or so in that third round, you could get yourself even more talent. Or what I think the Giants are going to end up doing, and I've been feeling more strongly about this as we've gotten close to the draft, I think we're going cornerback. I really do. I'm starting to think more and more that this team is going cornerback in that first round, because you look at the cornerbacks on this roster, and let's just be real. Cordell Flott is an undersized slot cornerback, in my opinion, who's got hurt a lot, and he's not very good against the run. I don't know if he could be an outside cornerback completely. Aaron Robinson's just not been able to stay healthy, and the dude's coming off an ACL injury. I mean, can you really put your stock on a third-year cornerback who just can't be healthy? I mean, we all love Adoree Jackson, but maybe is Adoree Jackson better off being a number two? Maybe he's better off being a number two cornerback overall. He's starting to get up there in age, and at the same time, he's never been able to stay healthy. And you look at the rest of the quarterbacks on this roster. I mean, Darnay Holmes is making $2.9 million. There's a lot of rumors going around that he could actually be traded at the NFL draft, or he could be cut because he's not going to play at that $2.9 million on his contract, and the Giants could easily find a replacement for him. Rodarius Williams was in the friggin' doghouse last year. I mean, Zion Gilbert, bit player. I mean, you look at the Leonard Johnson and Amani Oruwariye, two guys we picked up in the offseason. I think they're going to try to develop Johnson, but he's not going to be a guy you might want to throw out there and give him consistent enough snaps out there. And Oruwariye was benched last year. He can be a good depth signing and a special teams player, but I really believe they want to go out there and get themselves a true lockdown cornerback, homegrown, that Wink Martindale can deploy in his defensive system as long as he doesn't become a head coach after the season. You know, a guy that can deploy in this defense for years to come. I really believe that's becoming, in my opinion, just stronger and stronger what they're looking to get. And I think the other position they can look to target is a pass rusher. I think they want to get themselves more pass rush on the outside because of the fact that Thibodeau still needs to continue to develop as a pass rusher. Overall, he needs to develop more moves at as a defensive end outside linebacker. And Azeez Ojulari just could not stay healthy to save his life last year. And besides that, we had no pass rush consistently for multiple times at that outside linebacker position. And there was times where it hurt us last year. So I think they're going to be going outside linebacker. I'm not going with the notion we need to get ourselves a wide receiver. I think this wide receiver draft is so deep, we don't need to reach and get ourselves because we want to get a Zay Flowers or a Jordan Addison or a Quentin Johnson or a Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think you could get yourselves a Rashee Rice, an A.T. Perry, a Dante Demas, a Raheem Jarrett, a Jonathan Mingo, a Xavier Hutchinson, I forget the name of the kid from the Virginia, a Wicks, I think his name is.
Yeah, or the Andre Ixigla, the Princeton kid is.
Yeah, is Ilya Silvas, exactly, him too. The kid from, it's like a double name, I forget his name. Another kid from, I think, West Virginia, who's not bad.
They're like Marvin Mims, I think.
Marvin Mims is another one. Thank you for bringing his name up. This draft is so deep at wide receiver. I don't see the need why we need to reach and get a wide receiver at 25.
And the kid Rice from SMU too, the Rice.
Yeah, him too. Rashee Rice, Joshua Downs if he drops into the second round. They're so deep at this wide receiver position. I don't see why we need to reach and get a number one receiver. Get a receiver at 25. I think cornerback is a position that we need to explore. Because I look at that cornerback position, who can we consistently count on to go out there and be a true stopgap, like a true cornerback on that outside? I don't see anybody. I don't. Even Adoree Jackson gives me pause because he's always hurt.
Well,
I think we need to get ourselves a lockdown cornerback. Banks, Forbes, Kelly Ringo, Witherspoon, Gonzalez, the kid out of Michigan, DJ Turner, the kid out of Miami, Tyreek Stevenson. I think there's a lot of good lockdown cornerbacks that are coming out around this first and second round. I think we need to pounce and get ourselves a true number one. I don't know how you feel about it. That's the direction I'm leaning more towards. A trade back, pass rush, or cornerback.
I think those three scenarios are something that we've all brought up. I've thought about a trade back as well. I've been bagging the thing for a corner ever since, because the thing is they brought in a lot of bums this year. Like, I don't want to hear about the kid from Duke. I don't want to hear the kid from the Lions, even though he has some starting experience. He's probably going to get sunburn, right? But you need a cornerback, and I think that's more vital than a wide receiver because, again, like you said, you can get a guy in the second or third round who can help produce for you. Because, again, I think Darren Waller is going to be your number one. And if they go in with Darren Waller being the number one option, not number one receiver, but the number one option in the passing game, you can get a guy and draft him this year. Not to mention next year's draft could be even deeper with wide receivers, right? And you got nobody on your roster except a bunch of bums, so you got to build out this core, going forward. You have Wan'Dale Robinson, you have Paris Campbell, but he's on a one-year deal. Robinson's coming back off an injury. Sterling Shepard's on a one-year deal, but I think this is more of a farewell tour for him. You got a bunch of one-year guys and Jeff Smith and a few other guys on the roster. You have Colin Johnson coming back. So you have a roster of young players. So if you decide, you want to go and punt receiver for one more year because you have Waller, you have Dale, you have Bellinger. I wouldn't be surprised they took a tight end if Dalton Kincaid fell to them. That might be an option as well. Why? Because Darren Waller's been injured and he's up there in age. So you never know. You could have a 2 tight end set going forward and have a security blanket. I love corner. I love Joey Porter Jr. I think that's the guy that would be perfect for this system.
Another one. I didn't even mention him. Joey Porter Jr. is another one.
Or the kid from Illinois. I think those 2 guys. I'm into big corners. There's another guy I think from South Carolina who's 166, and he's about
Cam Smith. Yeah, Cam Smith out of South Carolina.
He's 6'2", 166. But the Giants like big corners, and I think, like you said, Jeff, we have nobody behind Adoree Jackson. We need a guy that's going to come in here and be a bona fide starter from day one, as opposed to a receiver who you can get. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson, who I still don't like the pick, but he's on the team. You got him in the second round, and I think that's what they need. There's a guy like Michael Smith, who I would love to get in the second round out of Stanford, who runs a great route tree, but has been injured most of his Stanford career. But if you look at that guy, he can run the routes. He can do everything you need. He's a big-bodied receiver. If you could pull that guy in a second, I would do it. But knowing the Giants, I know someone said that, the Giants are going to get that Schmidt kid from Minnesota or whatever. I'm like, the Giants are not going center. You know why? Because they don't leak. In this era, they don't leak. So the fact that they're leaking somebody out at 25 tells me that they may be either setting up for a trade or trying to blow some smoke screen out there so people are going to get hot so they can get a guy that they want and have another player drop to them. Because the Giants last year, nobody knew they were going Kayvon Thibodeau, okay? They wanted Sauce Gardner, but once Sauce got to the Jets, nobody knew they were going to pivot and get Kayvon Thibodeau. So much so that they drafted him over Evan Neal because they knew Evan Neal was going to be there at 7, and that's a guy we all knew the Giants had a chance to get, and Ekwonu, right? So those were 2 telegraphed things. The thing we haven't heard about is corner. We haven't talked about them much. I know they brought in a couple for visits, but if that guy falls, Porter or the kid from Illinois or even the kid from South Carolina, grab him.
Even the kid from Alabama, Eli Ricks, is another good quarterback.
Yes. You know what's interesting, though? Somebody mentioned something to me over a conversation. They go, maybe the Giants should have looked into Jeff Okudah, right? Maybe they could have said, hey, let's get a 5th-round pick to the Lions like the Browns did and get Jeff Okudah here, who had a decent season last year for the Lions. Now, that would have been a move where I would have been like, the Giants don't need to draft a corner in the 1st round. I think they draft a corner in the 1st round right now, and I think they take a center in the 2nd, and then the 3rd round they take their wide receiver. But there's so many holes right now that the Giants have stopgaps at. Like, you can't just think of this season. A lot of people want to think of the draft for this year. You got to think of long term. Like, that's why Herndon Hooker as a backup, like what they were saying, you need a backup player because guess what? You have nobody on the roster past Daniel past next year. Tyrod Taylor's going to leave. I think they can technically sign him, but you got to move on. You got to bring guys up in the ranks. So we'll see what the Giants do. I think the news that is interesting to me, and we'll pivot from the Giants for a minute, is the Texans flirting with getting rid of the 2nd pick and trading down. That to me is just because the guy's the best in the nation doesn't mean he's the best fit for the Giants. That's what you have to look at. The guy has to be the best fit. But the Texans, I want to talk about them for a minute because they're in the news right now, possibly flirting with trading down the 2nd pick. Now, to me, it's like, if you wanted Bryce Young, you should have traded up with the Bears to get Bryce Young, right? You didn't, right? So then you don't want C.J. Stroud for whatever reason, but now you're going to go take and let me. They want to trade with somebody. I think there was a trade from Peter Schrager. He said on his mock, the Colts are going to move up to 2, take Bryce Young. The Texans drop down to 4 and take Will Anderson, and then they take Will Levis at 12, and Herndon Hooker is taken at 11 by the Titans. So interesting way of going about it. I think it would be it might be the smartest move because the Texans aren't going to be good next year. So if you're forecasting next year's draft class and you have a chance to get Caleb Williams and Drake out of UNC, I don't know if he's going to come out. Things change, people change, but there's a lot of other guys besides him coming out. If you're like, the quarterback, we think the quarterback prospects next year are better, then you do that. I mean, I wouldn't trust them. I know they have Case Keenum on their roster. I know that they're going to try to build that up going forward. You have other teams lurking in the lurch, like Atlanta, who might take a quarterback, or Tennessee might take a quarterback. But if the Texans do this, I wouldn't be mad at them per se. I heard they like a guy like a Jaron Hall. So if they can get Jaron Hall in the third round and say, hey, listen, this is going to be our Russell Wilson, because remember, nobody knew Russell Wilson was going to be good. I liked Russell Wilson coming out. I thought he was interesting because he played baseball first, and then he, they play football. I always thought having a baseball acumen helps the quarterback because of the arm angles that the baseball player throws at. They throw basically like on a clock. I look at it like they can throw the ball any which way you want, right? They have to manipulate a spot more so than a quarterback. Like Daniel Jones played basketball. That's why his form is the way it is. When you watch Daniel Jones' form, he's always pointing like a basketball pass because that's what his muscle memory does. When you look at Patrick Mahomes, who played baseball, the reason why he's throwing no-look passes and things around his back and all that stuff is because of his arm angle and the muscles that he built in while becoming a pitcher. So that's where I think they might go. Interesting. But, I don't know if I would do it as a franchise. I probably would still take Bryce Young at that point. But, hey, the Texans are the Texans for a reason. They're in this position for a reason. They probably should have lost the last game, but they didn't, and I'll tell you why. With all that controversy with Miami, there's no way Lovie Smith and the Texans wanted to go out like that. And Lovie Smith also didn't want to go out like a loser on his last game and help the Texans get the pick. So, we'll see what happens. They've come out and said they're open for business for number 2. What are your thoughts on the Texans possibly trading out of that position?
No, I think it's BS. I mean, Coach Dante, who's obviously a Texans fan, pretty much said it's BS. He doesn't think it's actually going to happen. And maybe it has a lot to do with there's news coming out now that sounds like the Panthers are locking in on Bryce Young as their number 1 pick. So maybe that the Texans are not as high on a C.J. Stroud, a Will Levis, and then obviously the wild card of the whole thing, Anthony Richardson. So, I mean, it could end up being that maybe they're just not as high on the rest of those quarterbacks as they were maybe on Bryce Young. But it sounds like that Bryce Young right now is looking like the favorite to be the number 1 pick in this NFL draft. So, I mean, could they trade out of the number 2 pick and get themselves a boatload of draft picks? And like you said, I agree. They're not going to be a good team next year. They're in the process of rebuilding that entire offense. I mean, DeMeco Ryans is right now just trying to build pretty much a roster, get as many picks as he can, build up the depth on that roster, and he knows that this team is probably not going to be competitive in their first season with him as the head coach. So I don't think they're going to go there, but I still believe they're going to stick at 2. And draft, whatever quarterback is still there, whether it is Stroud, whether it is Levis, maybe they surprise out of everybody and take Anthony Richardson. Maybe they think that this kid under the right system is going to be able to develop into a top level quarterback because he has a lot of people are saying, and I agree. I think he has the highest ceiling but the lowest floor. So,
well, I was thinking that, and this is my thought process. Maybe the Panthers traded up to get Richardson. Maybe we're all breathing the wrong smoke, and they went up to get Richardson because they know he's not going to last to 9. With Atlanta sitting there, with other teams possibly being able to trade up, I think that's what they're trying to entice. I think they're trying to entice somebody to come up and get Richardson because they want Levis. But to me, it's like if they get Will Levis, that's fine. I don't really have a problem with it. But I think you need to have a great trade offer, though, right? You can't just trade back 2 spots and get, nothing for it or another second round pick. Mind you, I don't think they have a second round pick. From what I was doing is I think they were going over, they had their 2 firsts, no second, and a couple thirds. So I'm like, if I'm the Texans, maybe I would probably trade down at 12 more so than 2.
Yeah, get a second round pick. Get as many picks as you can, especially for that team. They need picks.
Right. So if somebody does want to come up to 2 and you still think you can get your quarterback at, I guess, 12, then I would probably do that and say, hey, listen, let me get my quarterback at 12 here, and then I can worry about the getting more picks down the road, because if you get a second round pick, you get more picks and you can build your team up. I think that's what it's interesting because philosophies are weird, right? Because remember, this team is historically known to make not mistakes, but do things out of the ordinary. Remember Reggie Bush and Mario Williams, and they were like, "Why are you going to take Mario Williams over Reggie Bush?" Well, guess what? They took the Hall of Fame talent over Reggie Bush, who was a good player, but they're building their franchise out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they decided, you know what? Well, let's trade down a couple spots. We'll get Will Anderson, the pass rusher, and then we'll see if we can roll the dice with our quarterback. And if not, maybe something like the Texans comes up and say, hey, listen, Herndon Hooker's still on the board. Maybe we'll trade with the Titans, get a second-round pick for them. They draft Herndon Hooker. You go down, and you can probably still draft Levis. Or if you don't want to draft Levis, maybe in the second round you can pick your quarterback, whoever's left, whether that's Jaron Hall, whether that's the kid from Fresno State. But they like Jake
the
Herman.
Stanford quarterback as well.
Yeah, he's all over the map. Some people had him. The Giants picking him in the 7th round. If the Giants pick Tanner McKee in the 7th round, I will be ecstatic. But I doubt he's going to last that long. But you never know. You never know what these people are thinking, who they're high on, right? And to me, if I'm the Texans, we don't have any picks. Maybe we need to shop one of these picks out and do it. Again, it could be a smoke screen, but a lot of people are saying, and a lot of credible people are saying, they're, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, they're all saying it. And when they start to say it, it gains a little traction, and I start to believe it. Now, will it happen? We'll find out next Thursday, obviously. But that's one of the rumors that we're hearing. And, someone asked me, Adam, are you excited for the draft? And I said, yeah, I guess so. Not as much as I have been in the past, right? I think this draft, for me, is a little bit more ho-hum. I like the prospects. We'll see what they do. But, like, next year, I'm like, oh, I'm ready. Next year, I'm ready for them to take the heir apparent to Daniel Jones and a lot more people coming out because, they had that COVID year. So a lot of players get the kickback and the receiving core. So this year, yeah, I'm excited, but I'm not as excited as I normally would be.
Do you think it's a good possibility we see 4 quarterbacks go in the first 10 picks?
In the first 10 picks?
Yes.
I don't know in the first 10 picks, but I definitely think in the first round you're going to get at least 4 quarterbacks going. I think you're going to get at least
5.
Wow. I would think at least.
You might get 5, yeah. I think I could see it. You know why I said that, Adam? I think I could see a team reaching for a Hendon Hooker in the first round.
Well, you do that because you want to keep his 5th-year option down and have good stuff if he does it. I mean, the thing about here's what people need to realize. If you can take a flyer on any quarterback you want, because guess what? They have a small rookie wage scale now. So you're not going to be blowing out your whole draft if a guy stinks. You can say, you know what, 2024, they have better quarterbacks. I'll just draft the next guy. I mean, look what the Cardinals did. They went with Josh Rosen, then they drafted Kyler Murray. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you can do it. It is something that you would do. I think you might be right about the 5. I don't know if 4 going in the top 10. I think in the top 20, 4 will go top in the entire draft. I think if a quarterback slips, let's say Richardson, and the Giants like Richardson but don't want to draft him right now, and a team like the Texans says, or another team calls up and says, hey, we love Richardson. We want to trade back in. Like, for example, let's say Seattle. They have Richardson going to Seattle, right? But let's say Seattle decides in the second round, we want Richardson. We'll trade you back up. If I'm the Giants, I'm doing it. As much as I love Richardson, I'm doing it because I think you can get more quality players in this draft. And I think the Giants need to – I know 10 picks is a lot, but keep shopping. You have a lot of holes. Bring in a lot of talent. Bring in a lot of guys. There's a lot of one-year players on this team that aren't going to be here next year. We lost 20 free agents. We didn't really sign that many guys back from last year's crop. I mean, Jahad Ward. I mean, O'Shane Ximines is still a free agent. You got Darnay Holmes you might cut. So there's going to be holes to fill. Get more roster spots. Maybe you get a first-round pick next year. Maybe you get another first-round pick or another second-round pick where if you're in the quarterback market next year because Daniel Jones falls on his face and you get one of these good quarterbacks and you're in the top 10, maybe you use that pick to trade up later on. We'll see what happens. There's a lot that's going to go on, and I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's more fun now because of the rookie wage scale that allows these trades to happen. Because before, you weren't going to do what they did. The teams aren't going to move up and down the roster like they were. I mean, Kansas City moved from 23 to 12 to pick Patrick Mahomes in 2017. Nobody believed that was going to happen. That wouldn't have happened years ago. You would have to do what Mike Ditka did for Ricky Williams. You're going to have to give up your whole damn draft just to get up that high. Now you don't have to do it.
The reason why I think that The reason why I believe there's going to be at least 4 quarterbacks going in that first round is because you always see it in every single NFL draft. Teams start to panic. The second they see some of those quarterbacks going early and a team is in the need of a quarterback, they always panic and they always try to trade up into that first round if they see one of the 2 of those quarterbacks that drop a little bit. Especially now, we know the top 4 quarterbacks that everybody wants. Obviously, Stroud and Young are most likely going 1 and 2. I mean, I'd be shocked if those 2 don't go 1-2. And I mean, you look at how teams evaluate Levis and how they evaluate the upside of Richardson. I mean, you look at the top 10 picks right now in the NFL draft. We all obviously know Panthers are drafting a quarterback. It's right now, I still believe that the Texans are drafting a quarterback. Who the hell knows what's happening with the Cardinals right now? I mean, they paid Kyler Murray all that money, but now the dude is coming off a serious injury, and they have questions about his heart and his willingness to play the game. The Colts, I believe, are drafting a quarterback. I mean, they haven't made it shy. Geno Smith got a nice deal, but is he the long-term solution in Seattle? Is Jared Goff the long-term solution in Detroit? Would it be shocking if they draft a quarterback? I wouldn't be shocked. You're in the Raiders might draft a quarterback. They have Jimmy G as their quarterback. You're in rumblings about the Falcons maybe being interested in drafting a quarterback. Texans could always jump back into the first round and get in the top 10 and draft a quarterback. I mean, you have the Tennessee Titans who could jump into the top 10 and draft a quarterback. I do believe that teams are going to panic and they're going to try to trade up into that top 10 and get themselves a quarterback. I do believe that's going to happen, and I'm starting to feel very strongly that there's going to be – I think it's even crazy, and you can call me nuts. I think it's not even that out of control that there could be 4 quarterbacks drafted in the first 4 picks. I do believe that because of the fact that teams are going to panic. They're going to start wanting to get up and get one of those quarterbacks in this draft. And no matter what we think of Levis and Richardson, I do believe that some teams are going to say, well, we believe if we put him in our system that we're going to get the most out of this kid. And I could see a team like Tennessee or a team like the Texans, if they don't go quarterback in that first pick and a team trades up to number 2 to get their quarterback, Texans could trade up into or maybe because they have the number 12 pick. They could trade up and maybe get themselves one of those other 2 quarterbacks if he's still there. So I could easily see one. I could see a team, or I could see all 4 of those quarterbacks go in the top 10. In my opinion, I think I'd be shocked if they don't.
Well, that's a good thought. I think you're right about the panicking situation. This draft is not as deep with quarterbacks as it will be next year. Next year's draft class, I guarantee you next year's draft class. And we say that every year, but there's guys who are in the last year of their eligibility. They cannot go any further. You've got a lot of transfers. There's a guy from Wake Forest who transferred to Notre Dame. He's going to be coming out. And I think you're going to see. I think there's after Herndon Hooker, I think there's some guys you can take a chance on. Tanner McKee, the kid from Fresno State, Jared Hall, that could probably be developmental backup players, but aren't maybe franchise movers. And maybe you're right. Maybe somebody does panic. I'm glad there are more quarterbacks that people deem in the first round. Last year, we didn't have anybody. Remember, one quarterback was taken in the first round last year.
Yeah, just Kenny Pickett. That's it.
Who by the way, ended up having a good season, and a lot of people were wrong about him. I'm sure a lot of people would love to have Kenny Pickett right now on their team going forward. Obviously, goes to Pittsburgh, and the rest is history. Him and George Pickens are going to be really good.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I mean, I just see teams panicking. I do. I see a team that needs a quarterback badly, and you look at the top of the draft. I mean, there's at least 4 or 5 teams after the top 2 picks that can definitely use themselves a quarterback, or at least a quarterback of the future. I mean, are the Raiders really confident right now that Jimmy G is the answer? Let's just be real. No, they are not. Are the Colts going to be stupid enough to not draft a quarterback again after they've pretty much been in quarterback turmoil for the past 5-6 years? They're going to get a quarterback. I mean, the Tennessee Titans, do the Tennessee Titans believe in Malik Willis? Do they actually believe in Malik Willis? I don't think they believe in him. I think they could easily get themselves a quarterback. And I'm starting to think, I don't know how you feel, Adam, But this talk of them believing Sam Howell's the guy, Sam Howell's the quarterback, would you be shocked, especially with this new ownership group coming in? Now, I know it's not done yet. Would you be shocked if Washington makes a bold move and trades up into the top 10 to get a quarterback from 16? I wouldn't. If a quarterback drops to the later part of top 10, I would not be shocked if the Commanders get up there and they go after if Anthony Richardson is sitting there at 8 or 9 or even 10. I would not be shocked if the Commanders trade up and they get themselves Richardson because they want to bank on this kid's upside.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's what I would do, right? Remember, we were doing that mock draft, and I think it was Further AM was like trying to make trades for that team, and Tanner McKee was sitting there in the second round. I think they might go quarterback as well to get some competition. You know what? The intriguing team to watch is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes.
They just said it's an open competition for the starting job. So that means to me that they're not 100% sold on Baker and 100% sold on Kyle Trask. And let's be honest, he's a third-round pick. So, folks out there, what does a third-round pick mean? It means when you are a GM and you draft a guy, there are certain people you can cut and there are certain people you can't. Right, a third-round pick you could easily push out of the roster and move down. And yes, was it a waste of a third-round pick? Yeah, but nobody is going to care. If you draft a guy in the first round, second round, those are premium picks. Those are guys you need to be on your roster. What am I saying, Adam? Well, what I'm saying to you is don't let Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield fool you. If you get Anthony Richardson and he's sitting there and you're Todd Bowles, you need to save your job. So you bring in that kid who, by the way, is in Florida. It wouldn't be that long of a drive, a couple hours up north, right? And you get him and you build your franchise around him. You go forward. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of intrigue. If I'm the Commanders, though, Jeff, you're right. You need to go up there and I like Sam Howell. I'll give you a little history. I think he was the consensus top number one quarterback going into 2022 from 2021 draft. When he didn't come out, he didn't declare. Going in, they said he was going to be good. He happened to his receiving core happened to be decimated because of injuries and being drafted. He ran the football a lot more. They lost their offensive coordinator as well, and that brought him down a bit. And because of his height and his comps to Baker Mayfield and things like that, they thought, you know what, we're not going to get him. He could be the steal of the draft. I think the Commanders would be better off not taking a quarterback right now. I could see them doing it, but not taking one, waiting till next year. Because then you can see how good Sam Howell is, right? You're going to fall on your face anyways. Ron Rivera is going to be fired. Your new ownership group will probably be there by the start of the season. You'll at least get to see Ron Rivera build the team. And then next year, the ownership group can have a hand in picking the quarterback and the coach next year. And that's why I think Sam Howell, I don't believe he's necessarily going to be the guy, and I don't disagree with you, Jeff, in terms of them going up and getting a quarterback. What I think is, if you're a smart, and we're talking about the Commanders, but they don't have Daniel Snyder anymore, so they might be a little smarter. The smart play would be start Sam Howell, see what you got, give him 16 games. Next year, the quarterback class is a lot more diverse. You're probably going to suck this year anyways, right? If they don't suck, or you can trade up and get one. Right? Or there'll be more available options next year for you. A lot of guys are going to be free agents. You might trade guys. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? Like, for all we know, next year, Daniel Jones will be on technically the last year of his contract. The Giants, let's say they struggle out the gate and they end up winning like 7 or 8 games, right? And they're on the cusp of the top 10, and they know that they can get one of these top bona fide quarterbacks to groom around and build around and get on a 5-year deal. I would trade him to the Commanders and say, hey, here you go. We'll give you Daniel, and we'll take this guy going forward. You have no idea. Don't be opposed to doing it. So smart GMs are progressive. You know, the Eagles draft a quarterback every year. I mean, people laughed at them when they drafted Jalen Hurts because they had Nick Foles and Carson Wentz on the roster, and they got rid of Nick Foles, and Carson Wentz had a meltdown, and guess who they had in the wings? Jalen Hurts. So I don't even know who else is on the roster for the Commanders. I don't know who they brought in. I don't think they brought in.
I think they brought in Jacoby Brissett, I believe.
Oh, yeah, he's competent. I think he's going to be the starter, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the starter. Ron Rivera is going to probably be in a playoff. Like, they weren't bad last year. They won 7 games. I mean, let's be honest. The Giants didn't blow the doors off of them. They tied them once. You don't think that they think that they can beat the Giants with their team, and they still have Deron Payne. Okay, they're going to get Chase Young back fully healthy this year. They lost a few players, but we'll see. We'll see what they do. They're going to be interesting. But I think Arizona's in the catbird seat in the draft because no one's heard a peep out of this team. No one knows what they're doing. They just went through a new coaching staff. Coaching staff changed their whole organization's an influx from the GM to the head coach to the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And right now they sit pretty because if for some reason the Texans don't take Bryce Young, you better believe, unless somebody trades up, like let's say the Colts trade up or something like that, you better believe their phone is going to be ringing. Yes. And I wouldn't be surprised their phone's ringing out. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a trade, like you said, with maybe the Commanders or maybe Atlanta or hell, maybe even Seattle. Maybe Seattle goes, listen, we're not going to get Richardson at 5 because, the Colts want him. See, the Colts are interesting because to me like this, right? I think Bryce Young is going first to the Panthers. I thought they liked C.J. Stroud. I think C.J. Stroud's a better passer than Bryce Young. I think he's more of an intangible player than Bryce Young. And so for me, that's what I would do personally. But we'll see what they do. The Panthers are interesting. Chicago, we don't know about them. Atlanta's interesting too, but I don't really believe Atlanta's quarterback hungry. I think they're trying to say that to get a trade up. Hey, we're going to be interested in a quarterback, So the more teams going for a quarterback, that means that you have less options. And like you said, Jeff, somebody's going to panic. Somebody's going to be like, oh, crap. We need to get up there quickly. So we'll see. Yeah. It's fun. This is why the draft is fun. And I got my draft guide. I'm thumbing through it. I'm looking at the quarterbacks. I'm looking at.
Do you think we see a lot of trades? By the way, do you think we see a lot of trades like we did last year?
I do think we see a lot of trades because guys like Jalen Carter are still going to be on the board. Willie Anderson is going to be on the board. There are a lot of great prospects that outside of the quarterback position. See, last year the reason why there were more, I would say more trades, but there was more activity was because the quarterback position was not as sexy as it is this year. We had Malik Willis, you had Matt Corral, you had these guys. They weren't that good. Remember, last year I had one of these draft guides. The quarterback position was a B+, right? This year it's an A-. They've got Will Levis going in the first round. They got C.J. Stroud. I mean, Will Levis is really the X factor here because he's such a wild card, right? He could go. I mean, you got Max Duggan, who people like, Herndon Hooker. There's a guy from Houston that people think is good, Clayton Tune. Jake Herner. He's got a bit of feistiness to it, but it really, and here's something to look at. The draft guide gives you a get to know the next in line. 5 next in line NFL quarterback prospects. Caleb Williams next year. Drake May, North Carolina. He's a redshirt sophomore this year, so we'll see if he comes out. You have Devin Leary of Kentucky. He's a super senior, so he's taking over for Will Levis. You have Quinnen Ears and KJ Jefferson. Those are only 5 guys. I mentioned there's a guy from Notre Dame coming out next year. There's a guy from Tulane coming out next year. You still have Spencer Rattler. You have Bo Nix. You have Penix Jr., Cam Ward. So there's a lot of other guys next year that if you decided, hey, we don't like this crop of quarterbacks, we'll wait till that. Because Caleb Williams is probably going to be the consensus number 1 quarterback next year. If I'm the Texans, why waste my time with Bryce Young?
That's a good point. Or not even just Bryce Young, whoever it is, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. I mean, one of those.
Think about it, right? Do you really think the Texans are going to be good next year?
No, absolutely not. I mean, unless that division just absolutely collapses, I don't think they're going to be that great.
I mean, it's going to be okay. So let's look at that division real quick, and then we'll kind of put a bow on this show as it's getting to be 12 o'clock and some work is coming in for me. And of course I can't slack on the job. Right. Yes. But let's look at that division real quick. They have the Colts, the Titans, the Texans, and who else is in that division?
Jaguars.
So the one team that we know that doesn't need a quarterback or doesn't have anything going on with them, the Jaguars. Okay. We know for a fact they're set at the quarterback position. The other 3 teams are kind of in limbo. The Tennessee Titans, I don't know what they're doing. Apparently their GM last year liked Malik Willis. The GM this year doesn't, right? And then you have the Colts, who we obviously know are going to be getting a quarterback. If they don't, they're just dumb. Jim Irsay should be fired.
Yeah, well,
and then you have the Texans. Do we really believe those three bottom-feeding teams are going to be that good? Like Tennessee, the only reason why I think Tennessee gets a quarterback is because next year they're going to be, again, like middle of the road. They'll be able to move on from Ryan Tannehill, right? Malik Willis, I don't know what they're doing with that kid. I don't know why you wouldn't give him a chance to play, but we'll see. And that division, they're only going to have probably one representative in the playoffs, and that's going to be the Jaguars. I mean, maybe the Tennessee Titans make it. Maybe.
I don't know what to think from that division right now. I mean, the Jaguars look like the team that's going to be they look like the team that's ready to ascend to that next level in the AFC. But I mean, the Colts, they're a friggin' mess. What are they going to do at the quarterback position? I mean, their roster is decimated all over the place with injuries and stuff. They just trade away Stephon Gilmore, who they had this past season. I mean, who knows? I mean, Leonard's coming off a serious injury. Taylor had a down year last year due to injuries. So, I mean, like, and then you look at the Titans, they pretty much cut their entire roster, and then they somehow still have Ryan Tannehill on the team. I mean, what is that team doing right now? And like you said, the Texans, D'Amico Ryan's rookie head coach, they got some nice defensive players, but offensively, what do they got? I mean, what do they really have? I like the kid Pierce. I have to say I like Damian Pierce a lot. The second-year player out of Iowa. I think he's a really good running back. But, I mean, that team is just something to be desired. So, I don't know what is going to happen in that AFC South. But, I mean, I would be shocked if Jacksonville doesn't win it because just the fact they should win it by default. But who knows at this point. But, I mean, I think it's really just what are the Texans and the Colts going to do with their quarterback positions in this draft. I still think the Texans are going to go quarterback. And even though they might not love C.J. Stroud, I think they're going to take C.J. Stroud because I'm starting to get convinced that Bryce Young is going to go to the Panthers. I think they just like Bryce Young. I think he's going to go number one. So, and the Colts, the Colts will be absolutely stupid if they don't go quarterback. What is their answer at quarterback? Like, what is their answer at quarterback if they don't take one at the fourth pick? Who is their quarterback? They don't have one.
I don't even know if they have one on the roster.
I don't think so. I mean, I think Matt Ryan, they cut him. And, I mean, who's their backup? Is it Ellinger, I think? Ellinger out of Texas, who is a decent quarterback, but he's nothing to, like, write home about. So they need a quarterback. How many years, if you're in Indianapolis, you're going to go with retread quarterbacks? Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan. You need a quarterback. It's like the curse of Andrew Luck has haunted that team since what they did to that guy. So, I mean, it's like they need to get themselves a quarterback. So, Will Levis, are they the team that takes a chance on Anthony Richardson? I don't know.
But I wouldn't do that if I was them.
No, I wouldn't either.
Like the Panthers, to me, are a better chance at getting Anthony Richardson to me than the Colts because you have, to me, that's why I thought when they were at 9, I'm like, Anthony Richardson's their guy because they could easily. They brought in somebody. I forget who they brought in as their. I know they got rid of Sam Darnold, right? I think they have Matt Corral, and they can have him.
They brought in Andy Dalton, I believe.
Oh, you're right. Yes, they have Andy Dalton. Good call. So they have Andy Dalton as their quarterback. They have Jacob Eason as their quarterback, and they have Matt Corral. Now, I liked Matt Corral coming out. You draft him in the 3rd round. Who knows what's going to happen? He's going to, learn. But Andy Dalton comes in. You have a guy in there, Frank Wright, who will finally be able to pick a quarterback.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's going to finally be able to get his young quarterback on there, and then you got a veteran that could pretty much help the young quarterback or show him the road, even though he's going to play right when he gets started. So, I mean, if I'm the Colts, I don't like him, but I'd probably take Levis because I think he's giving me the best available quarterback left. because I don't know if you can gamble on Richardson, even though his upside is tremendous. I don't know if you could gamble on him being, his floor is it's so low. I might have to go with the safe pick and go Levis at this point, even though I don't know how I feel about that. But
well, I mean, for the Colts, Levis makes more sense.
yes,
It just makes more sense. You need to get that guy in here and let him play, because I do believe that that's going to be his saving grace. If
plus
you
you can rely on the running game too. You have Jonathan Taylor, so he doesn't
see,
have to go out there and throw the ball.
Right, and that's why I think the Tennessee Titans are a perfect team for a developmental quarterback as well. To me, it really is your flavor of what you want to do. The Tennessee Titans getting Anthony Richardson is another team that I could see saying, "Hey, with him in the backfield and Derrick Henry in the backfield, who's going to stop us?" You know what I mean? So I don't. I think. But the problem with Richardson, and this is the reason why I wouldn't take him at 4. I wouldn't say Will Levis is ready to start per se, but I think you have a better chance at developing him, right? Like the Panthers, to me, taking Anthony Richardson, you can start Andy Dalton and say, listen, if this season goes awry while we're developing Anthony Richardson, we can get him in the game. The X factor, though, would be, to me, the Baltimore Ravens. Now, here's my proposal to the Indianapolis Colts. I say to the Colts, I call them up. I'm the Baltimore Ravens. I say, listen, we'll give you the 26th pick this year. We'll give you Lamar Jackson this year, and we will give you the second pick in next year's draft, or the first round pick in next year's draft, for the 4th pick overall, because we're going to go pick Anthony Richardson. You can have Lamar Jackson. I could see them doing something outlandish like that. I know that they just signed Odell Beckham Jr. It probably won't happen, but if you want to talk about shaking the draft up, that would be a team that I wouldn't be surprised, especially if Richardson ends – let's say, for example, the top 10 doesn't have 4 quarterbacks go. Let's say some kind of sneak into that 15, 20 range. That's where I'm like, Lamar Jackson's my bargaining chip. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, let me see what I can do here. That's what I would do. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, but it's going to be fun. It really is going to be fun to watch. This is why we have the draft. This is why we have these debates. And it's getting on 12 o'clock. We've been on for about 2 hours. So I think right now it's a good chance to kind of close out the stream, ending with the draft notes. So final thoughts, Jeff, on what you think is going to happen. Anything going on in sports, whether it's basketball, NFL, NHL, anything going on. What are your final thoughts before we close this thing out?
Well, I mean, if you're an NHL fan, how could you not be excited for Devils Rangers tonight? I mean, I'm not really as big of a hockey fan as I used to be when I was growing up. But one of the first things I remember as a child was those early Devils Rangers series back in the 90s. And you're going to get that into like a bigger degree now when you see at Game 1 tonight at Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, when the New Jersey Devils take on the New York Rangers. So that's going to be a very primetime, exciting event. And we know hockey fans, especially Devils and Rangers fans, don't like each other. Like they are blood rivals. So I mean, that's going to be something exciting to watch if you're a hockey fan. So just want to talk about that real quickly. With the Nets, I don't know what the hell to expect from the Nets going into Game 3. I really don't. Like I mentioned earlier, Jacques Vaughn should definitely look to change up that lineup. In terms of the Knicks, I mean, they already got their game. If they get this game tonight, it'd be more than gravy. But they needed to get their one game on the road. They got it on a Sunday night or Sunday. I'm sorry, Saturday. So they could go into this game, and if they end up losing it, it's not the end of the world. You just go back into Madison Square Garden tied 1-1. And in terms of the Giants, I'm still going with my option. I think they're going to take a cornerback at the pick number 25 if they don't trade out, because I could see them trading out of that pick. So that's just my final thoughts on it, and expect just an insane and whirly derby in the NFL draft. And maybe we finally figure out if Aaron Rodgers is going to be traded or not.
We went the whole 2 hours without talking about Aaron Rodgers. I'll mention this real quick before we go. I think he'll be a Jet. I think they're losing leverage every day it gets closer to the draft.
Yes.
There's no other team that wants Aaron Rodgers. By the way, Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to go to any other team. And so the Packers can hold out till they're blue in the face for a draft pick, but either three things happen: he either retires, he either gets cut, or he gets traded. Right? I think either way, it doesn't benefit the Packers in any way, because if he retires, you get nothing. If he gets cut, you get nothing. If you get traded, you get something. So I would think you would want something rather than nothing. I think the Jets are going to have to give up maybe a 2 second-round picks. I don't think they're going to give up both seconds this year. I know they have 2 second-round picks. People are like, oh, give up both of those. I think they're going to give up a second this year, and maybe a first or a conditional second that can go to a first, depending on playing incentives. But I think by the end of the weekend, I hope by the end of the weekend, Aaron Rodgers is a Jet, and we can get over with this saga. The NFL, I think, is like, they love drama, so they want to ride this thing out as much as possible.
I think it's going to happen at the draft. I think it's going to happen right around the draft time next week. I think we'll finally get the resolution.
I mean, think about it. They could switch if there's somebody. Let's say Jalen Carter falls, right, and he's at 13. I might call Packers and say, listen, man, we want Aaron Rodgers. Why don't you just trade us the 15th pick? We'll give you our second-round pick this year, our second-round pick next year, and we'll swap firsts, and you can get Jalen Carter on your team and build that defense and let Jordan Love go and then do something. Because let's be honest, they have no leverage. They have nothing going on. No one's going to get them. I know Mac was saying, well, some team can swoop in. Unless somebody gives them the moon and Aaron Rodgers picks up the phone and says, yeah, I want to go there. Remember, this is what their no trade clause allows the player to do. They have the flexibility to renege this trade. Say, I don't want to go there. Right? No trade clause. That's why the no trade clause for Philadelphia means they're locking in with Jalen Hurst. There's not a no trade clause with Daniel Jones. They can get rid of him whenever they want. There's no trade clause with Aaron Rodgers. That means he gets to dictate where he wants to go. He's even said he's going to play for the Jets. He said that's the only team he wants to play for. So it's a done deal. It's just a matter of the Green Bay Packers stop dragging your feet and let's get this done.
Because they want that first round pick. That's why they want that first round pick, and they're not getting it.
I want $1 million, but that's not exactly either. Like settle for what you want to settle for, a bag of chips and some dip, and let's move on, right? Because we're hanging there. We're hanging there doing nothing. Dragging our feet for what? For bullshit. So stop bullshitting us. Get it done. As for the Rangers Devils, Jeff, you mentioned something. This rivalry goes back a long, long time, folks. And it's one of the rivalries we don't talk about that is probably a must-see TV in sports, right? It's Yankees-Mets. It's Jets-Giants. It's one of these times where – and the thing about it is it's like the Brooklyn Nets versus the New York Knicks, right? It's the first time that two New York teams or two New York area teams can play each other that have a rivalry. I don't think the Islanders-Rangers has as much juice as, let's say, the Rangers-Devils. I mean, I know that they're both inner city. Islanders they have a storied history. They have their four.
Oh no, they hate each other. Islanders, Rangers, they don't like each other at all. They despise each other.
But the Devils, I think it's interesting as well. I think it's one of the rivalries, like I said, that's been around a long time. Remember, 94, the Rangers won, 95, the Devils won, right? So they have that long history. The drought for the Islanders is a lot longer. I know they don't hate each other, but the Islanders have been trash for most of my lifetime, up until recently. And we'll see what the Islanders do this year. Maybe we'll get that. But hey, let's talk about the Devils Rangers. This is going to be a good rivalry. People tune in. If you don't even like hockey, it's gonna ignite your juices. It should be physical. It should be good. Remember, the Rangers are still kind of building with their coach. The Devils kind of have come out of the doghouse and have now risen back to the playoffs. So it's good to see them going on, right? So I'm excited for it. I'm not.
Are you as a Ranger fan? Are you saying that this is the year they have to win?
Yes, I think this is the year you got to put it together. You got to do it. The problem with the Rangers is they're one of the most disappointing franchises here. They flirt with greatness only to come up short. Right, it's been their history, their MO. Remember that when they had Tortorella, they were running they were running there. Alain Vigneault had them going for a while, right? And it just seems like the Ranger team, it's the same song and dance every year. They're like the Yankees of they do well, they get into the playoffs, but then they choke or they can't. They have to have their goalie stand on their head. They need to have more contributors this year. They're going in a little bit healthier this year than they have been in recent memory. So let's see if their big stars come through. It's usually what the case is with the Rangers is their stars are either injured or they come up short, or they have to have their goalie stand on their head to advance.
Yeah, I think Shesterkin's the key to this series.
I agree with you. We'll see what happens. Right now, they're not at an advantage. They're going into Devil Stadium. They need to win one of these two games going forward to have a chance to advance. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I just want to bring that up real quickly.
Folks, this has been a great edition of the Hurry Up. My man Jeff has always been with me. I don't know if this is going to be a constant show. It really depends on my workload, but we'll try to get this out to you every Tuesday, as that is my no meetings day for work. So me and Jeff will collabo on that. However, you will find us on Premium Takes, where we'll go over everything sports related. This week we have our NFL draft special. We will talk about the NBA playoffs, but the draft will be our main focus. We're probably going to do a mock draft together, where we're going to pick a group of teams, the four of us. Out of the 31 eligible draft teams, we'll divvy it up. We can do a whole mock draft. We're going to go over those details later on in the week to kind of figure out what we want to do. But it should be a fun show. Jeff, again, thanks for joining me.
No problem, man.
Let them know where they can find you. Jeff is the hardest working man on YouTube. Let them know where they can find you, Jeff.
You can always find me at NYGJeffyT85. Cover the Giants, the Nets, the Mets. Cover wrestling. I got to rewatch Monday Night Raw, but I heard it was a doozy last night. Another doozy. Probably they're making a joke out of Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar. Shocker. Vince McMahon, thank you. And I also occasionally do some food videos just for the hell of it. But you can catch me also. I'm going to be doing the Heart of the City tonight with our guys, Coach Ed Gladney and NYG22. So make sure you guys go check that out tonight at 8:30. We'll obviously be talking about basketball, football, baseball, everything around the New York area. And always shout out to my guy, Adam Costas. I always keep saying he's one of the most underrated content creators out there. It's absolute mind-boggling how he's not over 100 subs or even more than that for the takes that he gives. He's bold enough to go out there and go against the grain and not always just follow what everybody else does, the narrative. So make sure you guys go give a sub up to Adam and all the hard work that he puts out there as well. And he's not one of the guys that's just going to be a cookie cutter content creator. He's going to give you the type of things that you're not might want to hear, but it's needed to be in this when it comes to YouTube. So shout out to you, Adam, and always appreciate you having me on the Hurry Up.
Well, thank you. You make this show go. It used to be a solo show, but it's better with a co-host because it allows thoughts to be back and forth as opposed to me.
Well, we have Mitch too, but he's probably in permanent timeout.
So. Oh, well, Mitch didn't try to show up today. So next time we'll get Mitch here and we can get him on timeout. But that guy always steers the conversation to some Eagle talk, no matter what it is. We could be talking about, rainbows and butterflies. And it'd be like, yeah, the Eagles have butterflies, So, but thank you for those kind words. Folks, you can find me doing this show. I haven't done the Hurry Up stand-up alone by myself in a little while, just because there's not that much going on in the NFL. But I might do some playoff thoughts going forward. I haven't decided yet about that. But
you talk about the Nets and just go on a rant about how much the Nets suck right now.
I think I'm going to start adding more videos in different sports platforms just to show you guys my chops so you don't get the same kind of boring football talk all the time. I like to be the guy that's the villain. I like to be the Darth Vader, the Joker, the guy, the antagonist to the protagonist, so to speak. Because if there's not an antagonist, you're not going to have a protagonist. Every great protagonist had a great antagonist. Batman had Joker. Luke had Darth. You know what I mean? The Rock had Stone Cold. You know what I'm saying? Hulk Hogan had the Macho Man. Everybody needs one. I'm the guy that's going to bring it to you with no holds barred. Why? Because that's what's needed. I'm tired of this cookie cutter society. I'm tired of people being, censored or canceled or don't want to speak. You speak your mind. And that's what you do. And I try to have thoughts. People, let me tell you how it works. I sit here all day and I thumb through everything. Every thought process. I go back in the history and the annals to bring you things that we don't talk about because history is relevant. All right? Guys like Dan Marino are relevant. You know, we talked about Hall of Famers and guys that are defined by their career. Somebody mentioned to me, oh, Jalen Hurts will be defined by not winning the Super Bowl. That doesn't take away his greatness if he doesn't. And we got to remember that. And I'm the guy that's going to bring it to you. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this. Jeff, as always, thank you so much for making this show better. I appreciate you. You're one of the 4 horsemen of YouTube. By the way, I stole that name from my friends. They allowed me to use it. I said, hey, listen, I'm going to use the 4 horsemen. We call ourselves the 4 horsemen. I said, I'm going to use it for YouTube. They said, you're more than welcome to do it. So you're one of the guys on there. And look for us on Sunday with our NFL mock draft, people. Have a great rest of your day. See ya.